माननीय सदस्यगण, जैसा आपको समाचार 2 के भाग के माध्यम से पहले ही सूचित किया जा चुका है कि माननीय मंत्री जी द्वारा बजट प्रस्तुत किए जाने के पश्चात इसकी प्रतियां आपको मेंबर पोर्टल के माध्यम से उपलब्ध करा दी जाएगी। आपको यह भी सूचित किया जाता है कि माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी के बजट भाषण की प्रतियां हार्ड कॉपी के रूप में उपलब्ध कराई जाएगी। अतः बजट प्रस्तुत हो जाने के पश्चात सदस्य कृपया बजट भाषण की अपनी अपनी प्रति प्रकाशन फलक से ले सकते हैं। आइटम नंबर 1, माननीय मंत्री महोदय श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण जी। मंत्री जी आज डिजिटल बजट पढ़ रही हैं।
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, sir, I present the budget for the year 2022-23. At the outset, sir, I want to take a moment to express my empathy for those who had to bear adverse health and economic effects of the pandemic. The overall sharp rebound and recovery of the economy is reflective of our country's strong resilience. India's economic growth in the current year is estimated to be 9.2%, highest among all large economies. I recognize we are in the midst of an Omicron wave with high incidence but milder symptoms. Further, the speed and coverage of our vaccination campaign has helped greatly. With an accelerated improvement of health infrastructure in the past 2 years, we are in a strong position to withstand challenges. I am confident that with Sabka Prayas, we will continue our journey with strong growth. Honorable Speaker, we are marking Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and have entered into Amrit Kal, the 25-year-long lead-up to India at 100. Honorable Prime Minister, in his Independence Day address, had set out the vision for India at 100. By achieving certain goals during Amrit Kal, our government aims to attain this vision. They are complementing the macroeconomic level growth focus with a microeconomic level all-inclusive welfare focus, promoting digital economy and fintech, technology-enabled development, energy transition, and climate action, and relying on virtuous cycles starting from private investment with public capital investment, helping to crowd in private investment. Since 2014, our government's focus has been on empowerment of citizens, especially the poor and the marginalized. Measures have included programs that have provided housing, electricity, cooking gas, and access to water. We also have programs for ensuring financial inclusion and direct benefit transfers. We are committed to strengthening the abilities of the poor to tap all opportunities. Our government constantly strives to provide the necessary ecosystem for the middle classes, a vast and wide section which is populated across various middle-income brackets, to make use of the opportunities they so desire. This budget seeks to lay the foundation and give a blueprint to steer the economy over Amrit Kal of the next 25 years, from India at 75 to India at 100. It continues to build on the vision drawn in the budget of 21-22. Its fundamental tenets, which included transparency of financial statement and fiscal position, reflect the government's intent, strengths, and challenges. This continues to guide us. The initiatives of the last year's budget have seen significant progress and have been provided with adequate allocations in this budget as well. The strengthening of health infrastructure, speedy implementation of the vaccination program, and the nationwide resilient response to the current wave of the pandemic are evident for all. The productivity-linked incentive in 14 sectors for achieving the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat has received excellent response, with potential to create 60 lakh new jobs and an additional production of 30 lakh crore during next 5 years. Towards implementation of the new public sector enterprise policy, the strategic transfer of ownership of Air India has been completed. The strategic partner for Neelanchal Ispat Nigam Limited has been selected. The public issue of the LIC is expected shortly. Others too are in the process for 2022-23. The National Bank
आपको पर्याप्त मौका पर्याप्त अवसर मिलेगा बेटे बेटे टिप्पणी मत कीजिए.
The National Bank for Infrastructure Development and National Asset Reconstruction Company have commenced their activities. Honourable Speaker, Sir, Budget 2021-22 had provided a sharp increase in provision for public investment or capital expenditure. Throughout the year, with the Honourable Prime Minister guiding the implementation, our economic recovery is continuing to benefit from the multiplier effect. This budget continues to provide impetus for growth. It lays a parallel track of 1. A blueprint for the Amrit Kal, which is futuristic and inclusive. This will directly benefit our youth, women, farmers, the scheduled castes, and the scheduled tribes. And number 2, big public investment. Number 2, big public investment for modern infrastructure, readying for India at 100. This shall be guided by PM Gati Shakti and be benefited by the synergy of multimodal approach. Moving forward on this parallel track, we lay the following 4 priorities: PM Gati Shakti, inclusive development, productivity enhancement and investment, sunrise opportunities, energy transition, and climate action, and 4, financing of investments. PM Gati Shakti. PM Gati Shakti is a transformative approach for economic growth and sustainable development. The approach is driven by 7 engines, namely roads, railways, airports, ports, mass transport, waterways, and logistics infrastructure. All 7 engines will pull forward the economy in unison. These engines are supported by the complementary roles of energy transmission, IT communication, bulk water and sewerage, and social infrastructure. Finally, the approach is powered by clean energy and Sabka Prayas. The efforts of the central government, the state governments, and the private sector together, leading to a huge job and entrepreneurial opportunities for all, especially the youth. PM Gati Shakti Master Plan, National Master Plan, the scope of PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan will encompass the 7 engines for economic transformation, seamless multimodal connectivity, and logistics efficiency. It will also include the infrastructure development by the state governments as per Gati Shakti Master Plan. The focus will be on planning, financing, including through innovative ways, use of technology, and speedier implementation. The projects pertaining to these 7 engines in the national infrastructure pipeline will be aligned with PM Gati Shakti framework. The touchstone of the master plan will be world-class modern infrastructure and logistics synergy among different modes of movement, both of people and goods, and location of projects. This will help raise the productivity and accelerate economic growth and development. Road transport. PM Gati Shakti Master Plan for expressways will be formulated in 22-23 to facilitate faster movement of people and goods. The National Highways network will be expanded by 25,000 kilometers in 2022-23. 20,000 crores of rupees will be mobilized through innovative ways of financing to complement the public resources. The data exchange among all mode operators will be brought on unified logistics interface platform designed for application programming interface. This will provide for efficient movement of goods through different modes, reducing logistics cost and time, assisting just-in-time inventory management, and in eliminating tedious documentation. Most importantly, this will provide real-time information to all stakeholders and improve international competitiveness. Open source mobility stack for organizing seamless travel of passengers will also be facilitated. Contracts for implementation of multimodal logistic parks at 4 locations through PPP mode will be awarded in 22-23. Railways will develop new products and efficient logistics services for small farmers and small and medium enterprises, besides taking the lead in integration of postal and railways network to provide seamless solutions for movement of parcels. One station, one product concept will be popularized to help local businesses and supply chains. As a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, 2,000 kilometers of network will be brought under Kavach, the indigenous world-class technology for safety and capacity augmentation in 2022-23. 400 new generation Vande Bharat trains will better energy efficiency and passenger riding experience will be developed and manufactured during the next 3 years. 100 PM Gati Shakti cargo terminals for multimodal logistics facilities will be developed during the next 3 years. Innovative ways of financing and faster implementation will be encouraged for building metro systems of appropriate type at scale. Multimodal connectivity between mass urban transport and railway stations will be facilitated on priority. Design of metro systems, including civil structures, will be reoriented and standardized for Indian conditions and needs. Parvat Mala. As a preferred ecologically sustainable alternative to conventional roads in difficult hilly areas, National Ropeways Development Program will be taken up on PPP mode. The aim is to improve connectivity and convenience for commuters, besides promoting tourism. This may also cover congested urban areas where conventional mass transit system is not feasible. Contracts for 8 such ropeway projects for a length of 60 kilometers will be awarded in 22-23. With technical support from the Capacity Building Commission, central ministries, state governments, and their infra agencies will have their skills upgraded. This will ramp up capacity in planning, design, financing, including innovative ways, and implementation management of the PM Gati Shakti infrastructure projects. Inclusive development, our second priority. Agriculture. The procurement of wheat in Rabi 21-22 and the estimated procurement of paddy in Kharif 21-22 will cover 1,208 lakh metric tons of wheat and paddy from 163 lakh farmers. and 2.37 lakh crores will be the direct payment of MSP value to their accounts. Chemical-free natural farming will be promoted throughout the country with a focus on farmers' lands in 5-kilometer wide corridors along the river Ganga at the first stage. 2023 has been announced as the International Year of Millets. Support will be provided for post-harvest value addition, enhancing domestic consumption, and for branding millet products nationally and internationally. To reduce our dependence on import of oil seeds, a rationalized and comprehensive scheme to increase domestic production of oil seeds will be implemented. For delivery of digital and high-tech services to farmers, with involvement of public sector research and extension institutions, along with private agri-tech players and stakeholders of agri-value chains, a scheme in PPP mode will be launched. Use of Kisan drones will be promoted for crop assessment, digitization of land records, spraying of insecticides and nutrients. States will be encouraged to revise syllabi of agricultural universities to meet the needs of natural, zero budget and organic farming, modern day agriculture, value addition and management. A fund with blended capital raised under the co-investment model will be facilitated through the NABARD. This is to finance startups for agriculture and rural enterprise relevant for farm produce value chain. The activities of these startups will include, inter alia, support for FPOs, machinery for farmers on rental basis at farm level, and technology including IT-based support. The implementation of the Ken-Betwa link project at an estimated cost of 44,605 crores will be taken up. This is aimed at providing irrigation benefits to 9.0 lakh hectare of farmers' lands, drinking water supply to 62 lakh people, 103 megawatt of hydro, 27 megawatt of solar power, allocations of 4,300 crores of rupees in the RE 21-22 and 1,400 crores of rupees in 22-23 have been made for this project. Honorable Speaker, sir, draft DPRs for 5 river links, namely Daman-Ganga Pinjal, Par-Tapi Narmada, Godavari Krishna, Krishna Pennar, and Pennar Kaveri have been finalized. Once a consensus is reached among the beneficiary states, the Centre will provide support for their implementation. For farmers to adopt suitable varieties of fruits and vegetables and to use appropriate production and harvesting techniques, our government will provide a comprehensive package with participation of state governments. MSMEs, Udyam, eShram, NCS and ASEEM portals will be interlinked. Their scope will be widened. They will now perform as portals with live organic databases, providing G2C, B2C and B2B services. These services will relate to credit facilitation, skilling and recruitment with an aim to further formalize the economy and enhance entrepreneurial opportunities for all. Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme has provided the much-needed additional credit to more than 130 lakh MSMEs. This has helped them mitigate the adverse impact of the pandemic. The hospitality and related services, especially those by micro and small enterprises, are yet to regain their pre-pandemic level of business. Considering these aspects, the ECLGS will be extended up to March 2023, and its guarantee cover will be expanded by 50,000 crores of rupees to total cover of 5 lakh crores. With the additional amount being earmarked exclusively for the hospitality and related sectors. Credit Guarantee Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises, CGTMSE, scheme will be revamped with required infusion of funds. This will facilitate additional credit of 2 lakh crore for micro and small enterprises and expand employment opportunities. Raising and Accelerating MSME Performance (RAMP) program with outlay of 6,000 crore over 5 years will be rolled out. This will help Msme sector become more resilient, competitive and efficient. Skilling programs and partnership with the industry will be reoriented to promote continuous skilling avenues, sustainability and employability. The National Skill Qualification Framework will be aligned with dynamic industry needs. Digital ecosystem for skilling and livelihood, the Desh Stack e-portal, will be launched. This aims to empower citizens to skill, reskill or upskill through online training. It will also provide API-based trusted skill credentials, payment and discovery layers to find relevant jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities. Startups will be promoted to facilitate Drone Shakti through varied applications and for drone as a service. In select ITIs in all states, the required courses for skilling will be started. Due to the pandemic-induced closure of schools, our children, particularly in the rural areas and those from scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and other weaker sections, have lost almost 2 years of formal education. Mostly, these are children in government schools. We recognize the need to impart supplementary teaching and to build a resilient mechanism for education delivery. For this purpose, One Class, One TV channel program of PM E-Vidya will be expanded from 12 to 200 TV channels. This will enable all states to provide supplementary education in regional languages for classes 1 to 12. High-quality e-content in all spoken languages will be developed for delivery via internet, mobile phones, TV, and through radio and through digital teachers. A competitive mechanism for development of quality e-content by the teachers will be set up to empower and equip them with digital tools of teaching and facilitate better learning outcomes. A digital university will be established to provide access to students across the country for world-class quality universal education with personalized learning experience at their doorsteps. This will be made available in different Indian languages and ICT formats. The university will be built on a networked hub and spoke model, with the hub building cutting-edge ICT expertise. The best public universities and institutions in the country will collaborate as a network of hub and spoke. An open platform for the national digital health ecosystem will be rolled out. It will consist of digital registries of health providers and health facilities, unique health identity, consent framework, and universal access to health facilities. The pandemic has accentuated mental health problems in people of all ages. To better the access to quality mental health counselling and care services, a national tele-mental health program will be launched. This will include a network of 23 tele-mental health centers of excellence, with NIMHANS being the nodal center, and International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore, IIIT Bangalore, providing technology support. Recognizing the importance of Nari Shakti as the harbinger of our bright future and for women-led development, during the Amrit Kal, our government has comprehensively revamped the schemes of the Ministry of Women and Child Development. Accordingly, 3 schemes, namely Mission Shakti, Mission Vatsalya, Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0 were launched recently to provide integrated benefits to women and children. Saksham Anganwadis are a new generation Anganwadis that have better infrastructure and audio-visual aids, powered by clean energy and providing improved environment for early childhood development. 2 lakh Anganwadis will be upgraded under this scheme. Current coverage of Har Ghar Nal Se Jal is 8.7 crores. Of this, 5.5 crore households were provided tap water in last 2 years itself. Allocation of 60,000 crores of rupees has been made with an aim to cover 3.8 crore households in 2022 and 23. In 22-23, 80 lakh houses will be completed for the identified eligible beneficiaries of the PM Awas Yojana, both rural and urban. 48,000 crores is allotted for this purpose. The central government will work with the state governments for reduction of time required for all land and construction-related approvals, for promoting affordable housing for middle class and for the economically weaker sections in urban areas. We shall also work with the financial sector regulators to expand access to capital along with reduction in cost of intermediaries. A new scheme, Prime Minister's Development Initiative for the Northeast, will be implemented through the Northeastern Council. It will fund infrastructure in the spirit of PM Gati Shakti and social development projects based on felt needs of the Northeast. This will enable livelihood activities for youth and women, filling the gaps in various sectors. It will not be a substitute for existing central or state schemes. While the central ministries may also post their candidate projects, priority will be given to those posted by the states. An initial allocation of 1,500 crores of rupees will be made, and the initial list of projects is given in Annexure 1 of my speech. Our vision to improve the quality of life of citizens in the most backward districts of the country through Aspirational Districts program has been translated into reality in a very short span of time. 95% of those 112 districts have made significant progress in key sectors such as health, nutrition, financial inclusion, and basic infrastructure. They have surpassed even some of the state average values. However, in those districts, some blocks continue to lag. In 22-23, the program will focus on such blocks in those districts. Border villages with sparse population, limited connectivity, and infrastructure often get left out from the development gains. Such villages on the northern border will be covered under a new Vibrant Villages program. The activities will include construction of village infrastructure, housing, tourist centers, road connectivity, provisioning of decentralized renewable energy, direct-to-home access for Doordarshan and educational channels, and support for their livelihood generation. Additional funding for these activities will be provided. Existing schemes will be converged. We will define their outcomes and monitor them on a constant basis. In 2022, 100% of 1.5 lakh post offices will come on the core banking system, enabling financial inclusion and access to accounts through net banking, mobile banking, ATMs, and also provide online transfer of funds between post office accounts and bank accounts. This will be helpful, especially for farmers and senior citizens in rural areas, enabling interoperability and financial inclusion. Honourable Speaker, sir, in recent years, digital banking, digital payments, and fintech innovations have grown at a rapid pace in the country. Government is continuously encouraging these sectors to ensure that the benefits of digital banking reach every nook and corner of the country in a consumer-friendly manner. Taking forward this agenda and to mark 75 years of our independence, it is proposed to set up 75 digital banking units in 75 districts of the country by scheduled commercial banks. The financial support for digital payment ecosystem announced in the previous budget will continue in 22-23 as well. This will encourage further adoption of digital payments. There will also be a focus to promote use of payment platforms that are economical and user-friendly. Sir, I move to the next priority. In recent years, over 25,000 compliances were reduced and nearly 1,500 union laws were repealed. This is the result of our government's strong commitment for minimum government and maximum governance. 1,486 union laws were repealed. Our trust in the public and ease of doing business is what is highlighted here, sir. For the Amrit Kal, the next phase of ease of doing business 2.0 and ease of living will be launched. In our endeavour to improve productive efficiency of capital and human resources, we will follow the idea of trust-based governance. The new phase will be guided by an active involvement of the states, digitization of manual processes and interventions, integration of the central and state-level systems through IT bridges, a single-point access for all citizen-centric services, and standardization and removal of overlapping compliances. crowdsourcing of suggestions and ground-level assessment of the impact with active involvement of citizens and businesses will be encouraged. A single window portal, Parivesh, for all green clearances was launched in 2018. It has been instrumental in reducing the time required for approvals significantly. The scope of this portal will be expanded to provide information to the applicants based on location of units. Information about specific approvals will be provided. It will enable application for all 4 approvals through a single form and tracking of the process through Centralized Processing Center Green, CPC Green. E-passports. The issuance of e-passports using embedded chip and futuristic technology will be rolled out in 22-23 to enhance the convenience for the citizens in their overseas travel. By the time of India at 100, nearly half our population is likely to be living in urban areas. To prepare for this, orderly urban development is of critical importance. This will help realize the country's economic potential, including livelihood opportunities for the demographic dividend. For this, on the one hand, we need to nurture the megacities and their hinterlands to become current centers of economic growth. On the other, we need to facilitate Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities to take on the mantle in the future. This would require us to reimagine our cities into centers of sustainable living with opportunities for all, including women and our youth. For this to happen, urban planning cannot continue with a business-as-usual approach. We plan to steer a paradigm change. A high-level committee of reputed urban planners, urban economists, and institutions will be formed to make recommendations on urban sector policies, capacity building, planning, implementation, and governance. For urban capacity building, support will be provided to the states. Modernization of building bylaws, town planning schemes, transit-oriented development will be implemented. This will facilitate reforms for people to live and work closer to the mass transit systems. The central government's financial support for mass transit projects and Amrit scheme will be leveraged for formulation of action plans and their implementation for facilitating the TOD and TPS by the states. For developing India-specific knowledge in urban planning and design, and to deliver certified training in these areas, up to 5 existing academic institutions in different regions will be designated as centers of excellence. These centers will be provided endowment fund of 250 crore each. In addition, the AICTE will take the lead to improve syllabi, quality and access of urban planning courses in other institutions. We will promote a shift to use of public transport in urban areas. This will be complemented by clean tech and governance solutions, special mobility zones with zero fossil fuel policy and EV vehicles. Battery swapping policy. Considering the constraint of space in urban areas, for setting up charging stations at scale, a battery swapping policy will be brought out and interoperability standards will be formulated. The private sector will be encouraged to develop sustainable and innovative business models for battery or energy as a service. This will improve efficiency in the EV ecosystem. Efficient use of land resources is a strong imperative. States will be encouraged to adopt unique land parcel identification number to facilitate IT-based management of records. The facility for transliteration of land records across any of the Schedule 8 languages will also be rolled out. The adoption of linkage with National Generic Document Registration System, NGDRS, with the One Nation, One Registration software will be promoted as an option for uniform process of registration and anywhere registration of deeds and documents. Necessary amendments in the Code IBC will be carried out to enhance the efficiency of the resolution process and facilitate cross-border insolvency resolution. Accelerated corporate exit. Several IT-based systems have been established for accelerated registration of new companies. Now the Center for Processing Accelerated Corporate Exit, CPACE, will process re-engineering, will be established to facilitate and speed up the voluntary winding up of these companies from the currently required 2 years to less than 6 months. Government procurement. Government rules have recently been modernized for the needs of Amritkal. The new rules have benefited from the inputs from various stakeholders. The modernized rules allow use of transparent quality criteria besides cost and evaluation of complex tenders. Provisions have been made for payment of 75% of running bills mandatorily within 10 days and for encouraging settlements of disputes through conciliation. As a further step to enhance transparency and to reduce delays in payments, a completely paperless, end-to-end online e-bill system will be launched for use by all central ministries for their procurements. The system will enable the suppliers and contractors to submit online their digitally signed bills and claims and track their status from anywhere. To reduce indirect cost for suppliers and work contractors, the use of surety bonds as a substitute for bank guarantee will be made acceptable in government procurements. Business such as gold imports may also find this useful. IRDAI, insurance regulator, has given the framework for issue of surety bonds by insurance companies. AVGC Promotion Task Force. The animation, visual effects, gaming and comic, the AVGC sector, offers immense potential to employ youth. An AVGC Promotion Task Force with all stakeholders will be set up to recommend ways to realize this and build domestic capacity for serving our markets and the global demand. Telecom sector. Telecommunications in general and 5G technology in particular can enable growth and offer job opportunities. Required spectrum auctions will be conducted in 2022 to facilitate rollout of 5G's mobile services within 2022-23 by private telecom providers. A scheme for design-led manufacturing will be launched to build a strong ecosystem for 5G as part of the production-linked incentive scheme. To enable affordable broadband and mobile service proliferation in rural and remote areas, 5% of annual collections under the Universal Service Obligation Fund will be allocated. This will promote R&D and commercialization of technologies and solutions. Our vision is that all villages and their residents should have the same access to e-services, communication facilities, and digital resources as urban areas and their residents. The contracts for laying optical fiber in all villages, including remote areas, will be awarded under the BharatNet project through PPP in 22 and 23. Completion is expected in 2025. Measures will be taken to enable better and more efficient use of the optical fiber. Export promotion. The Special Economic Zones Act will be replaced with a new legislation that will enable the states to become partners in development of enterprise and service hubs. This will cover all large existing and new industrial enclaves to optimally utilize available infrastructure and enhance competitiveness of exports. Atmanirbharta in defense. Our government is committed to reducing imports and promoting Atmanirbharta in equipment for the armed forces. 68% of the capital procurement budget will be earmarked for domestic industry in 22-23, up from 58% in 21-22. Defense R&D will be opened up for industry, startups, and academia, with 25% of defense R&D budget earmarked. Private industry will be encouraged to take up design and development of military platforms and equipment in collaboration with DRDO and other organizations through SPV model. An independent nodal umbrella body will be set up for meeting wide-ranging testing and certification requirements. Artificial intelligence, geospatial systems and drones, semiconductor and its ecosystem, space economy, genomics and pharmaceuticals, green energy and clean mobility systems have immense potential to assist sustainable development at scale and modernize the country. They provide employment opportunities for our youth and make Indian industry more efficient and competitive. Supportive policies, light touch regulations, facilitative actions to build domestic capacities and promotion of research and development will guide the government's approach. For R&D in the sunrise opportunities, in addition to efforts of collaboration among academia, industry and public institutions, government contribution will be provided. Energy transition and climate change. The risks of climate change are the strongest negative externalities that affect India and other countries. As Honourable Prime Minister said at the COP26 summit in Glasgow last November, and I quote, "What is needed today is mindful and deliberate utilization instead of mindless, destructive consumption," unquote. The low-carbon development strategy, as enunciated in the Panchamrit that he announced is an important reflection of our government's strong commitment towards sustainable development. The strategy opens up huge employment opportunities and will take the country on a sustainable development path. This budget proposes several near-term and long-term actions accordingly. Solar power. To facilitate domestic manufacturing for the ambitious goal of 280 gigawatts of installed solar capacity by 2030, an additional allocation of 19,500 crores for PLI, production-linked incentive, for manufacturing of high-efficiency modules with priority to fully integrate manufacturing units from polysilicon to solar PV modules will be made. Honourable Speaker, sir, the circular economy transition is expected to help in productivity enhancement as well as creating large opportunities for new businesses and jobs. The action plans for 10 sectors such as electronic waste, end-of-life vehicles, used oil waste, toxic and hazardous industrial waste are already ready. The focus will now be on addressing important cross-cutting issues of infrastructure, reverse logistics, technology upgradation, and integration with informal sector. This will be supported by active public policies covering regulations, extended producers' responsibilities, framework, and innovation facilities. 5 to 7% biomass pellets will be co-fired in thermal power plants, resulting in carbon dioxide savings of 38 MMT annually. This will also provide extra income to farmers and job opportunities to locals and help avoid stubble burning in agricultural fields. Saving energy is an important aspect of the energy management. Hence, energy efficiency and savings measures will be promoted. This will be done in large commercial buildings through the energy service company business model. It will facilitate capacity building and awareness for energy audits, performance contracts, and common measurement of and verification protocol. 4 pilot projects for coal gasification and conversion of coal into chemicals required for the industry will be set up to evolve technical and financial viability. The policies and required legislative changes to promote agroforestry and private forestry will be brought in. In addition, financial support will be provided to farmers belonging to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes who want to take up agroforestry. Honourable Speaker, I now move to the 4th priority, financing of investments. Capital investment holds the key to speedy and sustainable economic revival and consolidation through its multiplier effect. Capital investment also helps in creating employment opportunities, induced enhanced demand for manufactured input from large industries and MSMEs, services from professionals, and help farmers through better agri-infrastructure. The economy has shown strong resilience to come out of the effects of the pandemic with high growth. However, we need to sustain that level to make up for the setback of 2020-2021. As outlined in para 5 earlier, the virtuous cycle of investment requires public investment to crowd in private investment. At this stage, private investments seem to require that support to rise to their potential and to the needs of the economy. Public investment must continue to take the lead and prime the private investment and demand in 2022-23. Considering the above imperative, the outlay for capital expenditure in the Union budget is once again being stepped up sharply by 35.4% from 5.54 lakh crore in the current year to 7.50 lakh crores in 22-23. This has increased to more than 2.2 times the expenditure of 2019-20. This outlay in 22-23 will be 2.9% of the GDP. Effective capital expenditure. With this investment taken together with the provision made for creation of capital assets through grants and aid to states, the effective capital expenditure of the central government is estimated at 10.68 lakh crores in 22-23, which will be about 4.1% of the GDP. Green bonds. As a part of the government's overall market borrowings in 22-23, sovereign green bonds will be issued for mobilizing resources for green infrastructure. The proceeds will be deployed in public sector projects which help in reducing the carbon intensity of the economy. Gift IFSC. World-class foreign universities and institutions will be allowed in the gift city to offer courses in the financial management, fintech, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics free from domestic regulations, except those by the IFSCA, to facilitate availability of high-end human resources for financial services and technology. An international arbitration center will be set up in the gift city for timely settlement of disputes under international jurisprudence. Services for global capital for sustainable and climate finance in the country will be facilitated in the gift city. Infrastructure status. Data centers and energy storage systems, including dense charging infrastructure and grid-scale battery systems, will be included in the harmonized list of infrastructure. This will facilitate credit availability for digital infrastructure and clean energy storage. Venture capital and private equity invested more than 5.5 lakh crores last year, facilitating one of the largest startup growth system. Scaling up this investment requires a holistic examination of regulatory and other frictions. An expert committee will be set up to examine and suggest appropriate measures. Government-backed funds, NIIF and SIDBI, Fund of Funds, have provided scale capital, creating a multiplier effect. For encouraging important sunrise sectors such as climate action, deep tech, digital economy, pharma, and agri-tech, the government will promote these thematic funds for blended finance, with the government share being limited to 20% and the funds being managed by private fund managers. For financing the infrastructure needs, the stepping up of public investment will need to be complemented by private capital at a significant scale. Measures will be taken to enhance financial viability of projects, including PPP, with technical and knowledge assistance from multilateral agencies. Enhancing financial viability shall also be obtained by adopting global best practices, innovative ways of financing, and balanced risk allocation. Digital rupee. Introduction of a central bank digital currency will give a big boost to digital economy. Digital currency will also lead to a more efficient and cheaper currency management system. It is therefore proposed to introduce digital rupee using blockchain and other technologies to be issued by the Reserve Bank of India starting 2022 and 23. Financial assistance to states for capital investment. Reflecting the true spirit of cooperative federalism, the central government is committed to bolstering the hands of the states in enhancing their capital investment towards creating productive assets and generating remunerative employment. The scheme for financial assistance to states for capital investment has been extremely well received by the states. In deference to the requests received during my meeting with the chief ministers and state finance ministers, the outlay for this scheme is being enhanced from 10,000 crores in the budget estimates to 15,000 crores in the revised estimates for the current year. For 22-23, I'll repeat that sentence for the benefit of many of our honourable members. In deference to the requests received during my meeting with chief ministers and state finance ministers, the outlay for this scheme is being enhanced from 10,000 crores in the BE to 15,000 crores, 15,000 crores in the RE of the current year. For 22-23, the allocation is 1 lakh crores to assist the states in catalyzing the overall investments in the economy. These 50-year interest-free loans are over and above the normal borrowings allowed to the states, This allocation will be used for PM Gati Shakti related and other productive capital investments of the states. It will also include components for supplemental funding for priority segments of PM Gram Sadak Yojana, including support for the state share, digitization of the economy, including digital payments and completion of OFC network, and reforms related to building bylaws, town planning schemes, transit-oriented development, and transferable development rights. In 22-23, in accordance with the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission, the states will be allowed a fiscal deficit of 4% of the GSDP, of which 0.5% will be tied to power sector reforms, for which the conditions have already been communicated in 21-22. Fiscal management. As against a total expenditure of 34.83 lakh crores of rupees projected in the BE 21-22, the revised estimate is 37.70 lakh crores. The revised estimate of capital expenditure is 6.3 lakh crores of rupees. This includes an amount of 51,971 crores towards settlement of outstanding guaranteed liabilities of Air India and its other sundry commitments. Coming to the budget estimates, Honourable Speaker, sir, the total expenditure in 22-23 is estimated at 39.45 lakh crores, while the total receipts other than borrowings are estimated at 22.84 lakh crores of rupees. The revised fiscal deficit, Honourable Speaker, in the current year is estimated at 6.9% of the GDP, as against 6.8% projected in the budget estimates. The fiscal deficit in 22-23 is estimated at 6.4% of the GDP, which is consistent with the broad path of the fiscal consolidation announced by me last year to reach a fiscal deficit level below 4.5% by 25-26. While setting the fiscal deficit level in 22-23, I am conscious of the need to nurture growth through public investment to become stronger and sustainable. I will now move to Part B of my speech. Direct tax. Honourable Speaker, sir, I take this opportunity to thank all the taxpayers of our country who have contributed immensely and strengthened the hands of the government in helping their fellow citizens in this hour of need. So I have brought in a little verse from the Mahabharata. I won't spend more time reading because I would like the speech to get enough time. However, the substance of it is the king must make arrangements for yoga kshema, which is the welfare of the populace, by way of abandoning any laxity and by governing the state in line with dharma, along with collecting taxes which are in consonance with dharma. This is Mahabharata Shanti Parva Adhyaya, Shloka 11 from 72. Drawing wisdom from our ancient texts, we continue on the path to progress. The proposals in this budget, while continuing with our declared policy of stable and predictable tax regime, intend to bring more reforms that will take ahead our vision to establish a trustworthy tax regime. This will further simplify the tax system, promote voluntary compliance by taxpayers, and reduce litigation. Introducing new updated return. India is growing at an accelerated pace and people are undertaking multiple financial transactions. The Income Tax Department has established a robust framework of reporting of taxpayers' transactions. In this context, some taxpayers may realize that they have committed omissions or mistakes in correctly estimating their income for tax payment. To provide an opportunity to correct such errors, I am proposing a new provision permitting taxpayers to file an updated return on payment of additional tax. This updated return can be filed within 2 years from the end of the relevant assessment year. Honourable Speaker, sir, presently, if the department finds out that some income has been missed out by an assessee, it goes through a lengthy process of adjudication. Instead, with this proposal now, there will be a trust repost in the taxpayers that will enable the assessee herself to declare the income that she may have missed out earlier while filing her return. Full details of the proposal are given in the finance bill. It is an affirmative step in the direction of voluntary compliance. Reduced alternative minimum tax rate and surcharge for co-operatives. Currently, cooperative societies are required to pay alternate minimum tax at the rate of 18 and 1.5%. However, companies pay the same rate, which is the alternate minimum tax, at the rate of 15%. To provide a level playing field between cooperative societies and companies, I propose to reduce this rate for the cooperative societies also to 15%. Honourable Speaker, sir, I also propose to reduce the surcharge on cooperative societies from the present 12% to 7% for those having total income of more than 1 crore and up to 10 crores. This would help in enhancing income of cooperative societies and its members who are mostly from the rural and from farming communities. Tax relief to persons with disability. The parent or guardian of a differently abled person can take an insurance scheme for such person. The present law provides for deduction to the parent or guardian only if the lump sum payment or annuity is available to the differently abled person on the death of the subscriber, that is the parent or the guardian. There could be situations where the differently abled dependent may need payment of annuity or lump sum amount even during the lifetime of their parent or guardian. I propose thus to allow the payment of annuity and lump sum amount to the differently abled dependent during the lifetime of the parent and guardians, that is parent or guardians, attaining the age of 60 years. Parity between employees of the state and central governments. At present, the central government contributes 14% of the salary of its employee to the National Pension System, NPS, Tier 1. This is allowed as a deduction in computing the income of the employee. However, such deduction is allowed only to the extent of 10% of the salary in case of employees of the state governments. To provide equal treatment to both central and state government employees, I propose to increase the tax deduction limit from 10% to 14% on employers' contribution to the MPS account of state government employees as well. This would help in enhancing the social security benefits of the state government employees and bring them at par with central government employees. Incentives for startups. Startups have emerged as drivers of growth for our economy. Over the past few years, the country has seen a manifold increase in successful startups. Eligible startups established before 31/3/2022 had been provided a tax incentive for 3 consecutive years out of the 10 years from incorporation. In view of the COVID pandemic, I propose to extend the period of incorporation of the eligible startup by 1 more year, that is, up to 31/3/2023, for providing such tax incentives. Incentives for newly incorporated manufacturing entities under concessional tax regime. In an effort to establish a global competitive business environment for certain domestic companies, a concessional tax regime of 15% was introduced by our government for newly incorporated domestic manufacturing companies. I propose to extend the last date for commencement of manufacturing or production under Section 115B(ab) by 1 more year, that is, from 31st March 2023 to 31st March 2024. Scheme for taxation of virtual digital assets. There has been a phenomenal increase in transaction in virtual digital assets. The magnitude and frequency of these transactions have made it imperative to provide for a specific tax regime. Accordingly, for the taxation of virtual digital assets, I propose to provide that any income from transfer of any virtual digital asset shall be taxed at the rate of 30%, 30%. No deduction in respect of any expenditure or allowance shall be allowed while computing such income except cost of acquisition. Further, loss from transfer of virtual digital asset cannot be set off against any other income. Further, in order to capture the transaction details, I also propose to provide for TDS on payment made in relation to transfer of virtual digital asset at the rate of 1% of such consideration above a monetary threshold. Gift of virtual digital asset is also proposed to be taxed in the hands of the recipient. Litigation management to avoid repetitive appeals by the department. It has been observed that a lot of time and resources are consumed in filing of appeals which involve identical issues. Taking forward our policy of sound litigation management, I propose to provide that if a question of law in the case of an assessee is identical to a question of law which is pending in the appeal before a jurisdictional High Court or Supreme Court, in any case, the filing of further appeal in the case of this assessee by the department shall be deferred till such a question of law is decided by the jurisdictional High Court or the Supreme Court. This will greatly help in reducing the repeated litigation between taxpayer and the department. Taking forward our efforts to further promote the IFSC, I hereby propose to provide that income of a non-resident from offshore derivative instruments or over-the-counter derivatives issued by an offshore banking unit, income from royalty and interest on account of lease of ship, and income received from portfolio management services in IFSC shall be exempt from tax subject to specified conditions. Rationalization of surcharge. In the globalized business world, there are several work contracts whose terms and conditions mandatorily require formation of a consortium. The members in the consortium are generally companies. In such cases, the income of these AOPs has to suffer a graded surcharge up to 37%, which is a lot more than surcharge on the individual companies. Accordingly, I propose to cap the surcharge of these AOPs at 15%, 15%. Further, the long-term capital gains on listed equity shares, units, etc., are liable to maximum surcharge of 15%, while other long-term capital gains are subjected to a graded surcharge which goes up to 37%. I propose to cap the surcharge on long-term capital gains arising on transfer of any type of assets at 15%. This step will give a boost to startup community, and along with my proposal on the extended tax benefits to manufacturing companies and startups, reaffirms our commitment to Atmanirbhar Bharat. Clarification in relation to health and education cess as business expenditure. The income tax is not an allowable expenditure for computation of business income. This includes tax as well as surcharges. The health and education cess is imposed as an additional surcharge on the taxpayer for funding specific government welfare programs. However, some courts have allowed health and education cess as business expenditure, which is against the legislative intent. To reiterate the legislative intent, I propose to clarify that any surcharge or cess on income and profits is not allowable as business expenditure. Deterrence against tax evasion. Honourable Speaker, sir, presently there is ambiguity regarding set-off of brought forward loss against undisclosed income detected in search operations. It has been observed that in many cases where undisclosed income or suppression of sales, etc., is detected, payment of tax is avoided by setting off of losses. In order to bring certainty and to increase deterrence among tax evaders, I propose to provide that no set-off of any loss shall be allowed against undisclosed income detected during search and survey operations. It has been noticed that as a business promotion strategy, there is a tendency on businesses to pass on benefits to their agents. Such benefits are taxable in the hands of the agents. In order to track such transactions, I propose to provide for tax deduction by the person giving benefits if the aggregate value of such benefits exceeds 20,000 rupees during the financial year. A few other changes are being made, the details of which are there in the finance bill. Indirect taxes. So, remarkable progress in GST. GST has been a landmark reform of independent India, showcasing the spirit of cooperative federalism. While aspirations were high, there were huge challenges too. These challenges were overcome deftly and painstakingly under the guidance and the oversight of the GST Council. We can now take pride in a fully IT-driven and progressive GST regime that has fulfilled the cherished dream of India as one market, one tax. There are still some challenges remaining, and we aspire to meet them in the coming year. The right balance between facilitation and enforcement has engendered significantly better compliance, and enforcement has engendered better compliance. GST revenues are buoyant despite the pandemic. I would bring in something which I've got to know this morning, not part of my speech, but worth putting in here for the knowledge of the Honourable House. I would like to bring to the notice of this House that the gross GST collections for the month of January 22 are rupees 1,40,986 crores, which is the highest since the inception of GST. This has been possible due to rapid economic growth, recovery, post-COVID. This has been possible due to the rapid economic recovery post-COVID, as well as various policy and administration undertaken by central and state tax administrations. Taxpayers deserve applause for this growth. Not only did they adapt to the changes, but enthusiastically contributed to the cost of paying taxes. Special economic zones. In Part A of my speech, I have referred to the proposed reforms in SEZs. Alongside, we will also undertake reforms in customs administration of SEZs, and it shall henceforth be fully IT-driven and function on the Customs National Portal with a focus on higher facilitation and with only risk-based checks. This will ease doing business by SEZ units considerably. This reform shall be implemented by 30th September 2022. Customs reforms and duty rate changes. Customs administration has reinvented itself over the years through liberalized procedures and infusion of technology. Faceless customs has been fully established. During COVID-19 pandemic, customs formation have done exceptional frontline work against all odds, displaying agility and purpose. Customs reforms have played a very vital role in domestic capacity creation, providing level playing field to our MSMEs, easing the raw material supply side constraints, enhancing ease of doing business, and being an enabler to other policy initiatives such as PLI and phased manufacturing plans. My proposal on customs side are aligned to these objectives. Project imports and capital goods. National Capital Goods Policy 2016 aims at doubling the production of capital goods by 2025. This would create an employment opportunities and result in increased economic activity. However, several duty exemptions, even extending to over 3 decades in some cases, have been granted to capital goods for various sectors like power, fertilizer, textiles, leather footwear, food processing, and fertilizers. These exemptions have hindered the growth of the domestic capital goods sector. Similarly, project import duty concessions have also deprived the local producers of a level playing field in areas like coal mining projects, power generation, transmission or distribution projects, railway and metro projects. Our experience suggests that reasonable tariffs are conducive to the growth of domestic industry and make in India without significantly impacting the cost of essential imports. Accordingly, Honourable Speaker, Sir, it is proposed to phase out the concessional rates in capital goods and project imports gradually and apply a moderate tariff of 7.5%. Certain exemptions for advanced machineries that are not manufactured within the country shall continue. A few exemptions are being introduced on inputs like specialized castings, ball screw, and linear motion guide to encourage domestic manufacturing of capital goods. In the last 2 budgets, we have rationalized several customs exemptions. We have once again carried out an extensive consultation, including by crowdsourcing. As a result of these consultations, more than 350 exemption entries are proposed to be gradually phased out. These include exemptions on certain agricultural produce, chemicals, fabrics, medical devices and drugs, and medicines for which sufficient domestic capacity exists. Further, as a simplification measure, several concessional rates are being incorporated in the customs tariff schedule itself instead of prescribing them through various notifications. This comprehensive review will simplify the customs rate and tariff structure, particularly for sectors like chemicals, textiles, and metals, and minimize disputes. Removal of exemption on items which are or can be manufactured in India and providing concessional duties on raw material that go into manufacturing of intermediate products will go many a step forward in achieving our objective of Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. I shall now take up specific sector-specific proposals. Electronics. Electronic manufacturing has been growing rapidly. Customs duty rates are being calibrated to provide a graded rate structure to facilitate domestic manufacturing of wearable devices, hearable devices, and electronic smart meters. Duty concessions are being given to parts of transformer of mobile phone chargers and camera lens of mobile camera module and certain other such items. This will enable domestic manufacturing of high-growth electronic items. Gems and jewellery. To give a boost to the gems and jewellery sector, customs duty on cut and polished diamonds and gemstones is being reduced to 5%. Simply sawn diamond would attract nil customs duty. To facilitate export of jewellery through e-commerce, a simplified regulatory framework shall be implemented by June this year. To disincentivize import of undervalued imitation jewellery, the customs duty on imitation jewellery is being prescribed in a manner that a duty of at least 400 rupees per kg is paid on its import. Chemicals. Customs duty on certain critical chemicals, namely methanol, acetic acid, and heavy feedstocks for petroleum refining are being reduced, while duty is being raised on sodium cyanide, for which adequate capacity in the domestic arena exists. These changes will help in enhancing domestic value addition. MSMEs. Duty on umbrellas is being raised to 20%. Exemption to parts of umbrellas is being withdrawn. Exemption is also being rationalized on implements and tools for agricultural sector which are manufactured in India. Customs duty exemption given to steel scrap last year is being extended for another year to provide relief to MSME secondary steel producers. Certain anti-dumping and CVD on stainless steel and coated steel flat products, bars of alloy steel and high-speed steel are being revoked in larger public interest considering prevailing high prices of metals. To incentivize exports, exemptions are being provided on items such as embellishment, trimmings, fasteners, buttons, zipper, lining material, specified leather, furniture fittings, and packaging boxes that may be needed by bona fide exporters of handicrafts, textiles, leather garments, leather footwear, and other goods. Honourable Speaker, sir, duty is being reduced on certain inputs required for shrimp aquaculture so as to promote its exports. Tariff measure to encourage blending of fuel. Blending of fuel is a priority for this government. To encourage the efforts for blending of fuel, unblended fuel shall attract an additional differential excise duty of Rs 2 per litre from first day of October 22. A few other changes are being made in duty rates, customs, tariff and customs law, the details of which are there in the finance bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, with these words, I commend the budget to this august House. Thank you.
Item number 2, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji.
Sir, with your permission, I rise to lay on the table the following statements under Section 3(1) of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management FRBM Act 2003, Medium-Term Fiscal Policy cum Fiscal Policy Strategy Statement and Macroeconomic Framework Statement.
Item number 3, Vitt Videk 2020, Nirmala Sitharaman ji.
Sir, item number 3, Finance Bill. Sir, with your permission, I rise to move for leave to introduce the Finance Bill 2022.
प्रश्न ये कि वित्त विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करने की अनुमति प्रदान की जाए। जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ गए, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए, मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में, हाँ वालों के पक्ष में माननीय मंत्री जी वित्त विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करें।
Sir, I introduce the bill.
सभा की कार्रवाई कल बुधवार दिनांक 2 फरवरी 2022 को 4:30 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।
Those in favor, please say aye.
जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए,
I think the ayes have it.
हवालों के पक्ष में हुआ।
Ayes have it. The bill is passed.
We all know the importance of good health, but often we don't know how to achieve it. There's plenty of information available, but again, we don't know what is right and what is wrong. To know the truth and get your answers straight from some of India's top specialists, join me, Dr. Amrish Mittal, on Healthy India, only on Sansad TV.
No force can stop the change whose time has come. An emerging global power in a fast-changing geopolitical environment. With a goal to modernize, to showcase our defenders who are always battle-ready. Watch our special presentations featuring India's defense forces and their capabilities in The Defenders, only on Sansad TV.
Nature and You, the Environment Series, aim is to awake and aware people to protect our environment, be it climate or wildlife crisis, depletion of ocean resources, waste management issues. Only on Sansad TV.
Those in favor, please say aye.
जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए,
I think the ayes have it.
हवालों के पक्ष में हुआ।
Ayes have it. The bill is passed.
नमस्कार, स्वागत है आप सभी का। मैं हूं आपके साथ प्रीति सिंह और मेरे साथ है मेरे सहयोगी विशाल दहिया।
Thank you, Preeti. So finally, we have heard the budget speech from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, the second paperless budget which has been presented by this government after the last year. We'll take you through all the key highlights, key elements as well, and we'll try and make you understand as to what exactly has the budget said and what does it mean for everyone in the country. But let's first begin with some of the key highlights. Preeti?
बिल्कुल, ये जो तमाम बड़ी और मुख्य बातें हैं वो इस समय आप टीवी स्क्रीन पर देख पा रहे हैं। मेक इन इंडिया के तहत 60 लाख अतिरिक्त नौकरियां दी जाएंगी, ये बात बजट में सामने आई है। इसके अलावा जो अहम घोषणाएं हैं, एमएसएमई के लिए 2 लाख करोड़ रुपए की अतिरिक्त मदद का ऐलान हुआ है। साथ ही आईटीआई में स्किल डेवलपमेंट ट्रेनिंग और ड्रोन की ट्रेनिंग दी जाएगी। छठी जो मुख्य बात है वो ये है कि सरकारी स्कूलों में ई विद्या के तहत 200 चैनल्स का विस्तार किया जाएगा। इसके अलावा एलआईसी का आईपीओ अब जल्द आएगा। साथ ही 100 साल के ढांचागत निर्माण पर सरकार का अब फोकस रहने वाला है। इसके अलावा 2022-23 में नेशनल हाईवे नेटवर्क तक जो इसका विस्तार है उसको करने की बात कही जा रही है। क्लीन एनर्जी और क्लाइमेट जो है वो सरकार की प्राथमिकताओं में सामने आई है। इस बजट के जरिए एक बार फिर 5 नदियों को आपस में जोड़ा जाएगा। जो नदियों को आपस में जोड़ने की बात तमाम पिछले काफी समय से हम सुन रहे हैं, उसमें 5 नदियों को आपस में जोड़ा जाएगा। ऑर्गेनिक खेती को लगातार बढ़ावा देने की बात कही जा रही थी। एक बार फिर बजट में ये बात सामने आई है। रसायन मुक्त जो प्राकृतिक खेती है उसे लेकर आगे बढ़ा जाएगा। तिलहन के उत्पादन को बढ़ाने के लिए अभियान चलाने की बात है और एमएसपी के तहत रिकॉर्ड खरीदारी, किसानों को डिजिटल सर्विस दी जाएगी। उद्योगों, स्टार्टअप और शिक्षा के लिए रक्षा बजट का 25% दिया जाएगा। भारत नेट परियोजना 2025 तक पूरे होने की संभावना है। इसके अलावा शहरों में सार्वजनिक परिवहन को बढ़ावा देने की बात बजट में कही गई है। अगले 3 साल में 400 वंदे भारत ट्रेन चलाई जाएंगी। वन स्टेशन वन प्रोडक्ट से देश को फायदा हुआ है। गरीबों के लिए 80 लाख नए घर बनाए जाएंगे। इसके अलावा नए घरों के निर्माण के लिए 48,000 करोड़ रुपए का प्रावधान बजट में किया गया है। साथ ही अगले 5 साल में एमएसएमई सेक्टर को 6,000 करोड़ रुपए देने की बात कही गई है। 2022-23 में चिप वाले ई पासपोर्ट जारी किए जाएंगे। विश्व स्तरीय यूनिवर्सिटीज को देश में अनुमति दी जाएगी। ये भी बड़ी बात है जो सामने आई है। 2022-23 बजट में 7.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए का पूंजीगत व्यय जीडीपी का 2.9% होगा। तो ये तमाम मुख्य बातें हैं जो इस बार बजट में सामने आई हैं और बजट को लेकर चर्चा के लिए तमाम खास मेहमान हैं जो हमारे साथ जुड़ रहे हैं। पीएम गति शक्ति योजना को 2 चरणों में पूरा करने की बात कही गई है। शुभमोय भट्टाचार्य जी, कंसल्टिंग एडिटर द बिजनेस स्टैंडर्ड, साथ ही संचित शर्मा, डायरेक्टर AIMIL फार्मा। दोनों मेहमानों का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। सुबह मैं चाहूंगी कि पहले आप बता दें जो बजट की बड़ी बातें जो अभी हमने स्क्रीन पर दिखाई भी हैं, आपके लिहाज में कौन सी ऐसे बड़े पॉइंट्स हैं जो इस बजट में हमारे सामने आए हैं जिनको आप मानते हैं कि ये थोड़ा टर्निंग पॉइंट साबित होंगे?
प्रीति जी, सबसे बड़ा चीज इस बजट में और जिस पर सबकी निगाहें बनी हुई थी वो था कि कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर पे सरकार कितना व्यय करेंगे। और उस पर वित्त मंत्री ने कहा है कि हम लोग एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे थे 7 ट्रिलियन 7 लाख करोड़ के तक पहुंच जाएगा, उन्होंने इस पर एक्सीड किया है। शी सेज 7.5 लाख करोड़। ये बहुत बड़ा चेंज है क्योंकि कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर का अभी सख्त जरूरत है पूरे इकोनॉमी में। तो भारत सरकार 2 लाख करोड़ के करीब इजाफा कर रहे हैं अपने कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर पे। ये पब्लिक इन्वेस्टमेंट में ये बहुत बड़ा केंद्र बिंदु है क्योंकि पूरे इकोनॉमी का जो हम रोल आउट कर रहे हैं, सोच रहे हैं कि कोविड से कैसे इसका इफेक्ट सुधरा जाए, उसके लिए ये बहुत बड़ा फिगर है।
That's on 2.9% of the GDP if you look at that way. And if you add on the states component, it comes out to be somewhere around 4.1%. 35.4% hike in the capital capex outlay
of the GDP. So that means these are like very big numbers, and that is what the economy really needed. So, you know, I was not expecting that there would be any tax concessions. I was not expecting that there will be major changes in, you know, tinkering, because this is not the time for that. The economy needs major repair work coming from the COVID. And that is what this budget was about. So for that, this is a big number. The second big number is that the fiscal deficit, as expected, has therefore, I mean, instead of correcting to 6.8, it's 6.9. The bond markets and others, they will be naturally be annoyed because that means the government will be borrowing more. But that's expected because if you are not going, because that is necessary to finance the expenditure. The government has not raised any taxes as was expected. Now, that's an important point because, after all, the money has to come from somewhere. So
and when you're talking about fiscal discipline, you know, keeping the target of 6.4% for the next, financial year shows the intentions of the government to stay on the, fiscal prudence path, despite the setback from the COVID pandemic.
Absolutely. So here you have two things. A, that the expenditure is rising. It's going up to 39 lakh crore, 39 trillion rupees, the overall government expenditure. yet a large part of it is coming from capital expenditure. So that's something very unusual. It never used to happen. It's been happening over the last 2 years, and this year it's a big rise.
Okay.
And corresponding with that, the fiscal deficit has not been disturbed. So which means the government has essentially just hit it where it's needed.
Okay.
You would also, the fine print will also tell you that the subsidy figures for food and for fertilizer, now those are major ones, and those have not been disturbed with that, which means that they continue at pace. We'll come to the other things.
We'll come to the nitty-gritties as well, and we'll look at, now we're speaking about how much money is being spent. Where will it be spent? What are the key focus areas? We'll come to that as well, but let's first take an overview from Sanchit here as well. Sanchit, what's your first reaction in terms of taking a look at this particular budget? And let's not forget that the finance minister began her speech by saying that this budget is going to set the foundation for the Amrit Kal, that is from 75 years of independence to 100 years of independence.
Yes, definitely. I think the government has been bang on. From 75 to 100 years, usko hum landmark मान के चल रहे हैं. And I think आत्मनिर्भर भारत जो हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी बात करते हैं, उसके लिए इसके अंदर काफी चीजें बताई गई हैं. एंड आई एम वेरी होपफुल विद दिस बजट दैट जो 100 साल की प्रतिमा रखने जा रहे हैं, तो उसमें इट विल बी वेरी वेरी बेनिफिशियल दिस बजट. दिस इज अ पॉजिटिव बजट आई फील.
संचित, मैं फार्मा को लेकर ही स्पेसिफिकली आपसे सवाल करूंगी. हम जानते हैं कि फार्मा को लेकर हमारी स्थिति कितनी बेहतर है पूरी दुनिया के मुकाबले अगर हम बात करें, और अब हमने खास तौर से जो कोविड काल में स्थितियां देखी हैं, इसमें हम अपनी वैक्सीन की अगर बात करें, वो खुद बनाने की बात हो, और बाकी तमाम जो चीजें इस चुनौतियों के बीच अवसर के रूप में सामने आए, और अब ये बजट फार्मा को लेकर जो उम्मीदें थी, क्योंकि हमने देखा शेयर मार्केट में भी जो रहा, वो जिस तरह से उत्साह उसमें भी देखने को मिला, और अब जो घोषणाएं हैं उनमें कौन सी बड़ी बातें आप मानते हैं फार्मा को लेकर?
फार्मा को लेके आई फील जैसे आयुर्वेद को हमें बहुत आगे लेके जाना चाहिए. तो वैक्सीन की जो हमारी प्रोडक्शन है, वो कैपेबिलिटीज बड़ी हैं, और हम डेवलप भी कर रहे हैं अपनी इन हाउस मेड इन इंडिया वैक्सीन हैव बीन डेवलप्ड इस कोविड सिनेरियो में, जो कि बहुत पॉजिटिव साइन है फॉर दी हेल्थ केयर सेक्टर. एंड आई फील आयुर्वेदा इंडस्ट्री इज ऑल्सो लॉट टू कंट्रीब्यूट. जहां पे हमारी ऑर्गेनिक खेती की बात करी है वित्त मंत्री ने कि ऑर्गेनिक खेती के ऊपर ध्यान दी जाएगा, तो वैसे ही आई फील कि मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ आयुष जो प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में डेवलप हुई थी 2016 में, तो उसके बनने के बाद से लेके अब तक काफी सारे चेंजेस आए हैं, जहां पे आयुर्वेदिक इंडस्ट्री ने भी काफी मदद दी है फार्मा सेक्टर को. और आई थिंक आत्मनिर्भर भारत में जहां पे हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं कि 100 साल तक जो नेक्स्ट वी आर टचिंग 100 ईयर्स, तो उसके अंदर आयुर्वेदा विल प्ले अ की रोल. और उससे आई थिंक जो हमारा डेफिसिट है इंपोर्ट एक्सपोर्ट 3 लाख करोड़ का जो डेफिसिट हमारा चल रहा है, आई थिंक आयुर्वेदा इंडस्ट्री को अगर हम ऊपर लेके आएंगे, तो उसके अंदर उसमें हमारा एक्सपोर्ट जो हमारे आयुर्वेदिक मेडिसिन हो सकते हैं, दैट विल बी वेरी बेनिफिशियल. एंड फार्मा सेक्टर के लिए तो जो ऐलान है वो पॉजिटिव है ही है.
जी, and we are also joined by Preeti, 2 more guests here. Mr. Atul Gupta, partner Deloitte India, and Mr. Saurabh Chandra, former Secretary DIPP, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, are also with us. Let me begin with you, Mr. Gupta, first. Is the budget on the expected lines? We've been discussing for almost past 2 weeks as to what should be done by the government, what is required to be done. Has that been taken care of in this year's budget by the Finance Minister?
Absolutely. I think the budget is on pretty much on expected lines. The entire focus is on putting investment, enhancing infrastructure, putting money in capital expenditure, yet there'll be money in the hands of people because of the massive push to infrastructure. A 40% push on infrastructure and essentially on capitalizing. I mean, increasing the budget from 7.5 lakh crores from 5.5 lakh crores. Even the wildest imagination was not there. And I think one of the reasons for this has been a very good management of tax collections in this pandemic year by the government. I think the government needs to be commended for the excellent collections that they've done, which enables them to still maintain the fiscal deficit at a not a very high rate of 6.4%. They have nearly stuck to the target of last year's fiscal deficit, which was 6.8. They are at 6.9. specific pushes have been made to enhance domestic industry capability in capital goods. I think this Make in India scheme, emphasis on that, again, an enhancement of the PLI scheme beyond the 13 sectors to a 14th sector, which is solar modules, 20,000 crores attributed to this. I think we've not seen the last of it. The government has clearly now, in the last 1.5 years, and this budget reinforces it, that their push should be a supply side push. And that's what they have concentrated on this budget. They have not wavered on that. There are certain new things they've introduced, cryptocurrency, clearly something which was needed to be legislated upon. They have covered that. RBI is coming up with a digital currency. I think it is a very far-reaching budget, which gradually, as we unravel it, will lead to a clear thinking on the government's part of how they look at India at 100 years, with the PM Gati Yojana itself pushing everything on infrastructure and capital goods and making India self-reliant. I think the Make in India scheme for the first time has got all the push that it required. We've not been able to do that. The government has not been able to do that in its first tenure. But this budget and this particular scheme, I think.
सौरभ चंद्रा भी हमारे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं। सौरभ चंद्रा जी, पहले मैं आपका भी इनिशियल कमेंट चाहूंगी। जिस तरह हम देख रहे हैं दुनिया में सबसे तेजी से बढ़ती अर्थव्यवस्थाओं में भारत का नाम अब आगे आ रहा है और तमाम हिचकोलों के बाद अब जो 8.5%, 8 से 8.5% का अनुमान है, अब उसे देखते हुए ये बजट कितना सपोर्ट करता हुआ दिखाई दे रहा है इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को?
Okay, looks like we'll have to go back to Mr. Saurabh Chandra again. But Shubham, coming to now, what is the fine print? What does it say? You know, and let's begin with infrastructure, because that's the core area. When we talk about infrastructure, there seems to be a lot of focus in the budget on not only building roads and railways, but also other aspects of infrastructure. And PM Gati Shakti project seems to be at the center point of all these policies or schemes, or the way the money will be spent.
Absolutely. And let's just look at it in terms of also what the finance minister wanted to say. It was a very short speech, 1.5 hours. That's all. Within that, she spent about half an hour talking only about infrastructure. Now, that's very significant. It makes it clear what the government is trying to do. You know, there was a lot of expectation of going tangentially. It's not. She's hewing straight to the fact that we need to push the infrastructure. And along with that, you should read that MSME extension, the Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme, Linked Guarantee Scheme, that has been extended till the next March 2023. Remember that if we are talking about employment creation, these are the two major engines for employment creation. You spend on infrastructure and you spend on MSME. And on MSME, these two basically will be the ones which will ensure that the MSME sector doesn't have any sudden risks, sudden surprises. Because the government's ability, because of the pandemic, was very limited in terms of where it can put the money. So obviously you would find in the budget that there's been a lot of money that has been put in the health sector, education, and all the other things. But this is where it's coming. The digital, wherever the government has been possible, has gone in for expanding the digital scope.
The digital push.
Because what it does is it sort of gives more opportunity to entrepreneurs to come in. It reduces their costs for them to come in.
And that's pretty much visible, the digital push, both in education as well as in, we'll talk about that also a bit later, but the digital currency and the crypto assets there as well. We'll come to that part very interestingly there. But Sanchit, in terms of keeping the focus on the governance part there, Gati Shakti scheme, that seems to be the key focus area here. And, there are 7 engines of growth which are related with Gati Shakti, as Finance Minister has said.
Yeah, definitely. Gati Shakti scheme will definitely be one of the major pillars, and I think definitely the Gati Shakti scheme in developing the 100 pillars, the 100 years, it will definitely help.
Because it includes both the 20, look at it this way, the roads, the 25,000 kilometers of national highway. You're talking about 400 Vande Bharat trains. You're talking about coastal connectivity of the railways. You're talking about coastal logistics. There's enough space out there. In each one of them, she's dwelling in detail, saying what is the government's infrastructure plan, priority, and within that, how will the government will be going in for it. Okay. So I would say that these are like, it's really something where government, I mean, of course, governments do talk about infrastructure, but it's been after several years when we have seen the government really push this part of the economy very strongly. And the ripple effect of, and I wouldn't say ripple, is a wave effect actually, of this sort of a thing, as Atul was pointing out, will be coming along very soon. Because you're not getting any negative surprises at all from the budget. What has happened is that the government is saying that I have my purse only where I can do it after having taken care of the inclusion aspects to spend on investment, and that is what I'm spending.
Okay. जैसे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेकर जो बात कर रहे हो, जैसे सुबह ने भी कहा कि सरकार का फोकस बुनियादी ढांचा या इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेकर कहें वो कितना रहा है, वो इस बात से भी पता लगता है कि बजट स्पीच इस बार पहले के मुकाबले छोटी रही और उसमें से भी आधा जो घंटा रहा वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेकर वित्त मंत्री की तरफ से फोकस रहा, उसको लेकर जो ऐलान थे उसके बारे में घोषणा की गई। सौरभ चंद्रा हमारे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं। सौरभ चंद्रा, पहले मैं यही समझना चाहूंगी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेकर भी आपका कमेंट क्या है, बजट की बड़ी बातें आपकी नजर में क्या हैं, क्योंकि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ही एक तरह से रीढ़ है किसी भी अर्थव्यवस्था को आगे ले जाने के लिए।
You see, manufacturing competitiveness requires the highest priority. Your exports depend on it, imports from other countries depend on it, and holistic infrastructure as provided by the PM Gati Shakti Yojana would ensure that one element which was holding back competitiveness is removed. The other, of course, is factor reforms. Attempts have been made, but that is not a part of this budget. They've been made outside the budget to increase the efficiency of factor reforms. Therefore, whatever priorities have been laid down in this budget are what was required, what is apt. It talks about inclusive development. It talks about productivity enhancement, which is necessary for all sectors if you have to remain competitive. It talks about investment, especially getting private investment into the economy, which seems to be lagging. It talks about energy transition, which affects each one of us. The climate action, once again, anybody in Delhi would stress to the need of climate action. And financing of investment. All these are very important things. They were required, they were timely. And I must point out that this reform in the SEZs, repealing the SEZ Act, is something which was required. If something is broken, it needs to be fixed. You cannot keep doing the same thing and expecting different outcomes. This was long awaited. It's good that it's been placed on the table now.
Okay. Mr. Chandra, you're talking about in terms of the industry there specific, and you also refer to that Shubmoy. Let's come to that point in terms of manufacturing. You're talking about how a push has been given. It says here 19,500 crore rupees have been marked for PLI for manufacturing of high efficiency modules for polysilicon as well. Now that's a very significant move there, and MSMEs also, you were earlier pointing out the credit link guarantee scheme, that shows that these sectors, specifically manufacturing and more specifically MSMEs, are, as we've been saying, the backbone of not only the recovery path, but also the growth from here onwards as well, as we've seen earlier.
Absolutely. And just take it two more. One is, did you notice that the minister talked a lot about urban governance issues, urban reforms in connection with state governments? Now, just before the budget, we were just discussing this morning that whether urban reforms is something of the state government, municipal government, how much can the center involve? But here she is putting herself clearly there that urban reforms is something that the government will be looking at very strongly. This goes way beyond the smart cities. It's actually, again, infrastructure linked, yet it is something which is so very significant. Because if you do not change the face of urban India, growth impulses in the economy will get stymied, because most of the action of the entrepreneurs will be happening in urban India. So I mean, I was surprised at the amount of time that she spent talking about urban paradigm changes. That's a very significant point of the speech. You know, budget paras do not get it's not just thoughts. These are thought through things. So there's a very clear reason why the finance minister was putting a lot of emphasis on urban issues in the course of our budget speech.
And the policy follow-up is also pretty much clear when she said that, you know, a high-level committee will be set up to suggest ways so that not only mega cities, but also tier 2, tier 3 cities can also be, you know, developed in a sustainable manner.
Yeah, and along with that, two more things. One is, of course, the connecting of the entire postal network on digital mission and setting up the 75 digital banking units in most of the districts of the country. What you're essentially doing is connecting the country into a sort of a very smart functioning unit. That's what the government is trying to do. That it's the job of the private sector to lead the investment. We shall be creating the facilities to make them do it. And my job is not to stand around and to actually lead the investment. Like, for instance, the announcement, and that was a useful announcement about the LIC IPO. It clearly means that the government is saying that the LIC IPO is just about to come.
It's just around the corner.
Just around the corner. Now, these are the sort of stuff that you need for the government to essentially say that we are ready for business. COVID is hopefully on the wane. So now, where is the action going to be? And action is obviously going to be the infrastructure. There are a couple of things more there, which was the surety bonds as a substitute for government guarantee. Now, it's not often understood, but it's a very significant thing.
Indeed.
Because for MSME sector, raising up government bank guarantees for paying for contractors, for making payments, instead of that, if they can use surety bonds, it actually gives them a huge financial support. Now, those are the sort of stuff that actually would be very useful. These are the nuts and bolts, but they are much more important than, you know, giving sort of set-offs here or set-offs there, which don't often translate into actual performance, because those get eaten up in lots of things. But these are functional changes that you're introducing.
Okay.
And which is when it comes along to the issue of our digital currency.
Okay. We'll come to that part as well.
बिल्कुल इस पर और विस्तार से भी बात करेंगे. अतुल गुप्ता के पास एक बार हम और चलेंगे. अतुल गुप्ता, क्योंकि टैक्स को लेकर आप एक्सपर्ट है और थोड़ा इसको लेकर हमें बता सकते हैं. टैक्स को लेकर जो बड़ी बातें हैं, वो चाहे हम कॉर्पोरेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस की बात करें, जो घटाकर 15% किया गया. कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स जो है वो 18 से 15% कर दिया गया है. इस पर लगने वाला सरचार्ज कम किया गया. पहले 12% था, अब 7% है. थोड़ा सा मुझे बताइए, टैक्स को लेकर जिस तरह की राहत की बात की जा रही थी, वो कितनी नजर आई है और अब ये कितना पुश देगा आगे हमें आने वाले समय में?
देखिए, जो टैक्स है, जो डायरेक्ट टैक्स है, उसमें कोई बहुत मैसिव चेंजेस नहीं करना चाहती थी गवर्नमेंट, बिकॉज ऑलरेडी टैक्स रेट्स अब एक तरह से संभल गए हैं. इनफैक्ट अब जो टैक्स फैसिलिटेशन है, जैसे उन्होंने बोला कि अब आप अगर आपने कोई मिस कर दिया है, ओमिशन कर दिया है, कोई मिस्टेक कर दिया है, तो आप 2 साल तक उसको चेंज कर सकते हैं विदाउट एनी पेनल्टी. सो देयर इज अ ट्रस्ट जो सरकार दे रही है. दूसरा, जैसे स्टार्टअप्स के लिए है, स्टार्टअप्स के लिए जो टैक्स एग्जेम्पशन थी उसकी डेट बढ़ा दी है. पैंडेमिक हुआ, उन्होंने, और स्टार्टअप्स आर डूइंग वेरी वेल. द अमाउंट ऑफ यूनिकॉर्न्स जो हम देख रहे हैं और डेकाकॉर्न्स अब तो आ रहे हैं कंट्री में, तो स्टार्टअप्स के लिए भी पुश दिया. सिमिलरली, न्यूली मैन्युफैक्चर्ड इंडस्ट्री को जो 15% रेट दिया था, जो 31 तारीख 2023 तक का था, उसको भी एक्सटेंड कर दिया है 2024 तक. फिर वर्चुअल डिजिटल एसेट्स की जो बात की निर्मला सीतारमण ने, आई थिंक दैट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. समवेयर दे आर ट्राइंग टू रेगुलेट क्रिप्टो करेंसी, और बहुत ज्यादा इसको बढ़ावा नहीं दे रहे हैं, बिकॉज 30% टैक्स उस पर लगाया है, उस पर टीडीएस भी 1% लगाया है, और साथ ही साथ ये भी बोला है कि हम इंकरेज कर रहे हैं क्योंकि आरबीआई अपनी डिजिटल करेंसी लाएगा. तो आई थिंक वो एक बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्टर है दैट वी आर टेकिंग दिस इनटू अकाउंट. फिर लिटिगेशन मैनेजमेंट में भी जो उन्होंने बताया है वो भी बहुत अच्छा है, ताकि इतने लीगल डिस्प्यूट्स होते हैं हमारे यहाँ कि अगर कोई मैटर हाई कोर्ट या सुप्रीम कोर्ट पे पेंडिंग है, अगर उसी पर आपको नोटिस दिया जाता है टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट से, तो वो मैटर वेट किया जाएगा टिल हाई कोर्ट डजंट डिसाइड. दिस विल रिड्यूस कॉस्ट ऑफ लिटिगेशन. एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चेंज जो कि हम मिस कर रहे हैं वो है लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन्स. लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन्स पे उन्होंने 20% से 15% which should be very sizable benefit both to the stock markets, even to the real estate market. So ये जो measures हैं, I think ये वाकई ही important measures थे from a direct tax standpoint. अब आइएगा indirect tax side पे. Indirect tax की स्थिति और direct tax की स्थिति ये है कि हमारे collections are huge. That is one reason क्यों गवर्नमेंट फिस्कल डेफिसिट 6.9% पर जा सकी है इस बार और अगले साल के लिए 6.4% है, बिकॉज देयर इज लॉट ऑफ ईज के अब जो हमारे कलेक्शंस आ रहे हैं वो हम सेफली इन्वेस्ट कर पाएंगे. जो कैपिटल पुश, जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पुश दी है निर्मला सीतारमण ने, वो लार्जली इसी पे बेस्ड है कि दे आर वेरी बॉयंट टैक्सेस. एक जगह जहां पर डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट है, जहां पे क्लियरली गवर्नमेंट फेल हो गई थी इन द सेंस की टू मीट देयर टारगेट्स, उन्होंने जैसे शुभमॉय ने कहा LIC का उन्होंने क्लियरली बताया कि और नीलाचल का भी वो रेडी है. 35 डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट टारगेट्स थे, उनमें से खाली 9 पे प्रोग्रेस हुआ था, बट क्लियरली इंटेंट इज टू इंक्रीज प्राइवेट एंड पब्लिक पार्टनरशिप. सिमिलरली जो SEZ के लिए उन्होंने जो चेंज किया, क्लियरली SEZ लेजिस्लेशन बहुत अच्छे से काम नहीं कर रही थी. इट वॉज नॉट रियली हेल्पिंग एक्सपोर्ट्स, इवन दो एक्सपोर्ट्स are at the highest level. $400 billion we are expecting, which will be the highest ever in a pandemic year. के लिए तो ये बहुत ही बड़ा टारगेट है जो गवर्नमेंट अचीव कर रही है. दूसरा देखिए कस्टम साइड पे जो इन्होंने चेंजेस किए हैं, सारे एग्जेम्पशंस जो थे जो कि डोमेस्टिक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडस्ट्री के अगेंस्ट थे, केमिकल सेक्टर में, मेटल सेक्टर में, टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर में, उनको ये हटा रहे हैं. क्लियरली रिव्यू किया जा रहा है कि एग्जेम्पशंस नहीं दी जाए. What is the reason? Reason is वो चाहते हैं कि domestic manufacturing industry progress करे.
Okay.
So again a very good change. The other change I think जो है वो है इलेक्ट्रॉनिक सेक्टर के लिए. इलेक्ट्रॉनिक सेक्टर के लिए अब आइडिया है कि अब PLI सेक्टर में आपने इंसेंटिव्स दिए हैं, तो जो कंपोनेंट्स हैं, जो छोटे पार्ट्स है, उन पे ड्यूटी उन्होंने बढ़ा दी है ताकि अब वो यहाँ मैन्युफैक्चर हों. सो अगेन on the electronics value chain, हम एक बढ़ावा दे रहे हैं for domestic manufacture.
Okay.
Again, gems and jewelry sector has done exceedingly well for exports this year. Again, उनके लिए थोड़ी exemptions दी हैं unpolished diamonds के लिए. Again, a very good change. दूसरा जो है metal industry. As we know, steel industry एक basis है पूरी capital goods industry के लिए.
Indeed.
उसके लिए भी इन्होंने ये सोचा कि इतने रेट्स बढ़ गए हैं तो import duties कम की हैं for
Indeed.
Steel industry for uncoated steel. Similarly, umbrella sector, ये MSME sector के जो products हैं, उनके लिए duties बढ़ाने की बात है, customs duties बढ़ाने की बात है, ताकि MSME sector को बढ़ावा मिले to manufacture in India. So some of these things are very important. Even from a climate perspective, एक बहुत अच्छा change जो डाला है वो है कि
Okay, indeed. We'll come back to you, Mr. Gupta. You've explained, pretty much in detail as to what has happened when we're talking about direct taxes and indirect taxes. I'll take one of that point to Shubhmoy here, and we've been referring to that. Now, since Mr. Gupta has explained that in detail, the question is, how do you believe this will impact, the overall sentiments vis-a-vis the taxation on virtual digital assets? Now, 30% is the slab which the finance minister has announced. This is something which was being talked about as well. How will this, impact going from here onwards the overall cryptocurrency segment? And let's not forget that the government has also made it very clear that it will very soon launch its own digital currency as well, digital rupee, in this financial year itself.
Absolutely. So there are two parts to it. One is that the tax recognizes that this sort of a currency is here to stay. That's a very big recognition. At the same time, we also realize that that digital currency is not for the poor. It's for people who can afford to get into that froth, into that new type of asset class. Mm-hmm. It's a different income group altogether. Now, if that is there, then the government is only right that the government says, fine, if you are going to profit from it, let me also tax you at the rate at which I tax other assets. So I'll tax you at 30% and I'm not going to give off any set-off. Mm-hmm. You cannot say that I've got a loss here, so I'll make it up otherwise. So what the government is saying is, I'm just recognizing it. It doesn't stay under the carpet. I bring it on stream. You do whatever you want in terms of developing the currency, in terms of developing the ability. India has become the startup capital, so there'll be lots of inventive ideas that will be coming out there. But the jolly well, the tax will be there. The digital currency taxation, the digital currency of RBI, which the finance ministers endorsed, is something that is a totally different thing, in the sense that that is where it sort of takes on the UPI and all the other things that we have been having. You know, the huge expansion in digital payment system that we have had. This sort of takes it on to the next level. So therefore, that is something that the government would be promoting and would be saying, yes, that is something that I want to be there.
Yeah. We'll come. We'll continue that thread on the digital currency aspect. Mr. R. Mukundan is joining us from CII. He is the MD and CEO of Tata Chemicals Limited. Mr. Mukundan, the industry perspective on the budget, quite a lot of aspects here we've been discussing in terms of what the government has done, be it vis-a-vis the manufacturing, be it MSMEs, the solar power sector as well. But overall, if we look at how is the industry viewing this particular budget?
Thank you very much. So let me first start by saying what we wanted the government not to do, which is to tinker around with tax rates and keep that stable. I think they've done the right thing. So compliment the government for that. Secondly, I think also simplification of some of the litigation processes. I think this is going to reduce immense amount of burden and build a lot of trust in the way industry and the government deal with each other. Coming down to the positive steps, we need continued support for MSME. The continuation of the support which government has said in the GLS scheme and various other schemes is very, very positive step. Also, paperless procurement for MSME, I think is again a very positive step which has been announced. The big push which government has given in terms of infrastructure, I think is going to spur greater efficiency and effectiveness, especially Gati Shakti and all these steps in terms of green power. And also the whole focus on urban infrastructure, which has been highlighted by everyone before. I think these are all extremely positive steps because I think in many sectors today, the capacity utilization has to still rise up a little bit more. In some sectors, it's already very high, so they are putting capex in. But in many sectors, I think capacity utilization has to increase further. Until that time, the government public spending has to be increased, and this whole focus in terms of upping the spending on infrastructure, upping the expenditure on public finances is a very, very welcome step. So it's going to sort of increase the overall pull and the growth rate of economy. So I must compliment the government on two aspects. One is in terms of higher infrastructure spending, and secondly, clear focus on enabling ease of processes, whether it be simplification. They've committed to that. They've spoken about standardization. They've spoken about digitization of processes, which will ease the business community's burden in terms of dealing with various nuances. I just don't want to forget a couple of other things which the finance minister spoke, and I think this is very, very important. One is on education. Our next generation has lost out in the last 2 years. The focus on digital education and spreading the access to everyone, I think, is a very, very positive step. And also on the health, National Digital Health Mission, which has been started, I think is a very important step in terms of giving access to healthcare to a large amount of sections of society. And she's also not forgotten the much not focused area of mental health that has got the central focus this time. So all in all, a very positive budget, and all I can say is that we now have to work
Mr. Mukundan, the sense I get from your response is that, there is a lot of positive sentiment from the industry in both aspects, as you're pointing out, what has been done in the budget and what has not been done. Now, the question I want to ask you is, what's going to be the response from the industry in terms of private investment as well? Because there is a lot of push required. Now that you agree that a lot of positive aspects have been taken care of and no tinkering with the taxes will also help the industry, how can we move further ahead on the private investment part?
You would already see a huge amount of commitment coming from private sector. As I mentioned, many sectors are already having huge capacity, have reached capacity point where they need to invest. For example, I can tell you about chemical sector. Most of the chemical companies are investing very hard, not just for India demand, the China plus one opportunity which has come up with the increased supply chain issues. which our customers are facing overseas, India will become a net exporter of many specialty chemicals and other chemicals. But I'm also saying that other sectors which were underutilized, especially in the MSME area, will also get a huge boost. And I think the whole aspect of continuing with the support for a couple of more years, including the whole simplification of SEZ. I think if you look at 400 billion target, I think the simplification of SEZ, I think that Finance Minister spoke about in terms of taxation and other rules, and working with the state governments in terms of pushing ahead. All these are welcome steps, and you would see that the commitment to at least make India again the fastest growing economy for next couple of years. I think industry will be stepping up investment, stepping up its pace, hand in hand with government to spur the growth once more. It's a real growth oriented budget and industry is very positive.
Okay.
बिल्कुल मिस्टर मुकुंदन, आप हमारे साथ बने रहिए। इस समय एक और खास मेहमान हमारे साथ जुड़ गए हैं, ए.के. भट्टाचार्य, एडिटोरियल डायरेक्टर बिजनेस स्टैंडर्ड, हमारे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं। ए.के. भट्टाचार्य सर, जब हम बजट पेश होने से पहले बात कर रहे थे तो आपने कहा था कि दो चीजों पर नजर होगी, एक तो फिस्कल डेफिसिट और दूसरा जो डेट लेवल है वो कम ना किया जाए। इसे देखते हुए बजट कैसे होगा वो देखने वाली बात होगी। तो इन पहलुओं पर आप फिलहाल बजट को कैसा मान रहे हैं, और जो रोजगार और गरीबों के लिए ऐलान है उसे आप कैसे देख रहे हैं इस बजट में?
देखिए, दो चीज है। द फर्स्ट पॉइंट जो मैं बोलूंगा कि जो फिस्कल डेफिसिट जो है उसका नया जो ग्लाइड पाथ जो है वो मैं समझता हूं कि मार्केट के लिए उतना डिस्ट्रप्टिव नहीं रहेगा, क्योंकि अगर 6.9% इस साल का जो फिस्कल डेफिसिट था, टारगेट था 6.8%, वो बहुत ही कम बढ़कर 6.9, तो करीबन उसी में हम कह सकते हैं। और उसके ऊपर हम नेक्स्ट ईयर के लिए 6.4% का टारगेट रख रहे हैं। पर अंडरलाइंग these numbers, there is, in my view, a very positive feature. वो positive feature is about a cautious budgeting. The nominal growth projections for this budget for next year is less than 12%. In other words, and the current year, the nominal growth turned out to be 18%. So clearly, the government is budgeting on a very cautious way. And by the time the year ends, that is the next year ends, my sense is that the revenues will continue to clock at a rate which is probably faster, because the economy will actually, nominal size of the economy will grow at a faster rate.
Okay.
So my assessment is that the fiscal deficit is a very conservative number. If you look at the size of the economy going up to around 259 lakh crore for next year compared to 232 lakh crore in the current year, you are essentially budgeting for only around 11.86% growth. Now, given the inflation, the projections, my reading is that this number of 11.86% will be an underestimation, which in other words, you will see the revenue bump will be more than what the budget has projected.
Okay.
So the fiscal deficit reduction plan will probably surprise us on the positive side. That's number one. Number two, a little known fact as of now is that in terms of transparency in the budget, the government has always been indulging in extra budget requirements, meeting below the line borrowings, which were not shown in the fiscal deficit number. Now, in the last year, February 2021, the finance minister had said that she has brought it down to 30,000 crore. But what you see now is actually is not even 30,000 crore, it is around 751 crore only. And for next year, there is no extra budget requirements. In other words, all that you see in the 6.4% fiscal deficit, you are actually seeing the real number.
Okay.
So this, in my view, in a span of 3 or 4 years, to have achieved this kind of transparency in terms of fiscal deficit is a positive signal to the market, in my view. Number two point that we must note is that this is the budget on expenditure side budget. This is a budget that will be remembered for the manner in which the capital expenditure has been raised by probably by a biggest the rate of increase seen in recent years. And then, of course, there are many other small, and I think the long-term capital gains tax relief is, I think Mr. Gupta talked about, and I think it's a fact that has not been internalized by the market so far. The long-term capital gains tax for many people and the higher end of the income was 20%. Now it has been capped at 15%. My sense is that the corporate sector and the markets will probably, catch on to it and respond to it later. And one thing which we still don't know is whether the bond index, the inclusion of India in the bond indices has been facilitated or not. So that I think we are still not sure.
Okay.
Final point on the MSME sector. I think the IBC code
आएंगे MSME सेक्टर को लेकर भी अलग से कमेंट लेंगे आपसे कि क्या मिला है जो उम्मीद के मुताबिक था, क्या वैसा बजट रहा है। फिलहाल हम चलेंगे संसद भवन परिसर, जहां मेरे सहयोगी अखिलेश सुमन इस समय हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं। अखिलेश, बताइए अभी कैसी सरगर्मियां हैं, बजट आने के बाद क्या प्रतिक्रियाएं आनी शुरू हुई हैं?
देखिए, निश्चित तौर पे बजट एक नॉन कंट्रोवर्शियल बजट है और मैंने सत्ता पक्ष और विपक्ष दोनों लोगों से बात की तो विपक्ष बहुत कुछ कहने की स्थिति में नहीं है, लेकिन जो सत्ता पक्ष या जो अन्य लोगों से बात करके जो समझ में आता है उससे यह लगता है कि यह काफी इनोवेटिव बजट है जिसमें कि पॉलिसी रिफॉर्म्स को ज्यादा प्राथमिकता दी गई है। और जैसे निर्मला सीतारमण बार बार बोल रही थी कि इंडिया एट 100, मतलब एक दूरगामी दृष्टिकोण से यह बजट बनाया गया है जिसमें कि आप देखेंगे कि इन्वायरमेंट से लेके अर्बन हाउसिंग से लेके बिटकॉइन से लेके जो डिजिटल करेंसी है, इन सारे क्षेत्रों में एक तरीके से पॉलिसी अनाउंसमेंट है और उसमें कि इस तरह से दिया गया है जिसमें कि जो मिडिल क्लास को अभी तक यह लग रहा था कि उसके लिए नई अपॉर्चुनिटी जो हो सकती है वो नई अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलने की उम्मीद झलक रही है। दूसरी तरफ अगर आप देखें कि अंतर्राष्ट्रीय क्षेत्र में दो काफी इंटरेस्टिंग एलोकेशंस हुए हैं। जैसे हर बजट में एक कुछ देशों के लिए एलोकेशन होता है, इसमें एक एलोकेशन हुआ है अफगानिस्तान के लिए 200 करोड़ की और म्यांमार के लिए 600 करोड़ का बजट एलोकेशन हुआ है। मतलब यह है कि भले ही अफगानिस्तान और म्यांमार में जो शासन है अभी प्रतिकूल परिस्थितियां वहां की जनता भुगत रही है, लेकिन भारत सरकार वहां की जनता के प्रति जो अपनी जिम्मेदारी है, दायित्व है और जनता को जो मदद देनी चाहिए उस मदद देने के लिए अभी भी तैयार है भारत। और इस पर किस तरीके से मदद पहुंचाई जाएगी, चाहे वो म्यांमार में हो या अफगानिस्तान में हो, यह काफी महत्वपूर्ण बात इस बजट में आई।
जो पड़ोसी देशों के लिए बजट है उसकी डिटेल्स और ज्यादा क्या है वो आपसे लेंगे। संचित शर्मा, मैं फिर से एक बार स्वास्थ्य पे आऊंगी आपसे। स्वास्थ्य को लेकर हम जानते हैं कि एक बार फिर से हमें दोहराने की जरूरत नहीं है कि जो महत्व है वो कितना ज्यादा हमने समझा है इस क्षेत्र में। लगातार जो अपना एक तरह से हम कहें खर्च है और बजट है वो बढ़ाने की जरूरत हमने महसूस की है। उसके बाद अब आप मुझे थोड़ा समझाएं कि सेक्टर में आपको क्या लग रहा है, कौन से बड़े ऐसे पॉइंट्स हैं जो कहीं ना कहीं स्वास्थ्य क्षेत्र को बदलते नजर आएंगे आने वाले समय में?
इस बजट में मैं मानता हूं कि जो हमारे रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट इंसेंटिव्स जो सरकार दे रही है, इससे रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट को बहुत बूस्ट मिल रहा है। तो आई फील जो कोविड वैक्सीन की जो रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट हमारे देश में हुई है और ऐसे ही और नए सॉल्ट्स हैं, नए मॉलिक्यूल्स हैं जो इसके ऊपर जो इंसेंटिव स्कीम सरकार की है, उससे आई थिंक बहुत अच्छा बूस्ट मिलेगा और उसी से हमारे को एक्सपोर्ट बिजनेस में भी हमारा बढ़ोतरी होगी। तो आई थिंक ये जो R&D इंसेंटिव स्कीम्स हैं ये दैट विल हेल्प अ लॉट।
सो हेल्थ को लेकर नेशनल टेली मेंटल हेल्थ प्रोग्राम साथ में जो बोथ हेल्थ सेक्टर और एजुकेशन सेक्टर में खासकर डिजिटल यूनिवर्सिटी और जो सारे जो सीरीज ऑफ अनाउंसमेंट्स किए गए हैं वो एक एजुकेशन में एक नया एफर्ट देते हैं। डिजिटल यूनिवर्सिटी एक ऐसा चीज है जिसका हमें रूपरेखा इसके बारे में किसने सोचा भी नहीं था, लेकिन ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है। भारत के हर यूनिवर्सिटीज के अच्छे जो डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं उनके स्कीम्स को, अगर उनके लर्निंग्स को, कोर्सेज को डिजिटल यूनिवर्सिटी के सहारे भारत के उन तबकों के बच्चों के पास लाया जाए, हब एंड स्पोक मॉडल की उन्होंने डिस्कशन किया। ये एक बहुत बड़ा, जिसे कहते हैं एक रेवोल्यूशनरी चेंज सिद्ध हो सकता है, क्योंकि आप घर बैठे कोई भी बच्चा जो जा नहीं सकता है कहीं पे, वो डिजिटल यूनिवर्सिटी के थ्रू से भारत के बेस्ट यूनिवर्सिटीज के विद्या को आयत्त कर सकता है। यही सारी चीजों का बहुत पहले जरूरत था और ये चीजें अभी जो आ रहा है ये हमारे लिए बहुत फायदेमंद सिद्ध होगा। एक चीज मैं टैक्स के बारे में बता रहा था जो अतुल ने भी जिक्र किया, कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स का तो है ही, साथ में जो कॉर्पोरेट सरचार्ज जो चेंज किया गया फॉर अमलगमेशंस के लिए,
15% से उसको 7% में लाया गया, तो ग्रुप तो जब कंपनीज एसोसिएशन ऑफ कंपनीज के मतलब जो कैस्केडिंग सरचार्ज जो होते थे उस पर उन्होंने रोक लगाया है. उन्होंने उसको कहा कि अबाउट 15% उसको ऑलमोस्ट AOPs. ये बहुत बड़ा चीज है क्योंकि इससे कंपनीज मतलब मर्जर्स एंड एक्विजिशंस में इसका बहुत बड़ा फायदा रहेगा. कैसे वो होगा?
Only thoughts there, Shubhmoy. We also have Mr. Rajiv Talwar, former president, PhD Chambers, with us. Mr. Talwar, we are speaking to industry representatives as well. There seems to be quite a lot of positive sentiment in terms of how this budget is being perceived by the industry. Your views there, not only what the budget has said, but what also the industry is going to do in response to several measures which have been taken.
I think it's a very, very positive budget. And it's a great budget going ahead. I think first of all, we need to acknowledge that the finance minister, by giving a stable economic environment for the last 2 years, despite the pandemic, I think has passed her test by fire. And I think deserves all the appreciation that we can give it to her, whether it is industry, whether it is farmers, whether it is MSMEs and exporters. So to that extent, a great step forward in this budget also. 9.2% GDP growth, which is envisaged, is the highest for any large economy. PLI schemes in PM Gati Shakti in all pushing by all 7 engines. Make in India to create 6.2 million jobs. And then a sector which is very, very well known to me, 80 lakh homes being made under the Prime Minister Housing Scheme, 48,000 crores being set aside for it. That is where you need the bottom of the pyramid for employment. That is where they will get it. And it will affect more than 200 associated industries and thereby give a huge fillip to GDP growth as well as employment, which is the need of the hour. And next, to come on to the fact that 25,000 kilometers of highways, 400 trains to be started, data centers being given infrastructure status, again will add to the real estate development as well as IT sector development. So I think in all, every part has been touched upon. This ASEZ Act, which was a Sunset Act, now is getting a new amended legislation. Drinking water being provided. I think that's very, very in every sector we will provide development as well as contribution of the industry. I think the next major vision for the future is what the Prime Minister, not only housing for all, but also when he said and created a new Ministry of Cooperatives. I think that is a very major step for agriculture. The best known reforms in the last 2-3 decades were the agricultural reforms, but they had to be taken back. I think this is the new sector on which we need to work on in cooperatives. The success of India in the dairy farming sector, making India the largest producer of milk. I think for farmers who have 2.5 acres and less, the cooperative movement needs to kick in very, very strictly over there and in a very large manner. And that is what the budget will provide. They've even lowered on surcharge on the cooperatives to 7% when it comes to agriculture, 2.37 lakh crores MSP directly to be provided to farmers, wheat and paddy, linking of rivers. I think there is something which is as a vision which is being promoted, and we should then look at the next major initiative, 3 major visions. The next one after housing and agricultural cooperatives is the MSME sector.
Indeed.
I think being provided over there that yes, to be raised to 5 lakh crores, 2 lakh crores, especially for the MSME sector. I think many duties to be reduced on components which can be taken advantage of by the MSME sector for making world-class goods for not only the Indian market, but also exports, which are now from 400 million. The next target is $650 billion next year. I think in all, this is what will actually absorb informal labor.
Indeed.
Not only in the housing and the co-op and the agriculture sector, but also in the MSME sector. So that's where I think when we were talking largely yesterday that there is a K.
Okay, those indeed are the three key areas, Mr. Talwar, which you're pointing out to. Mr. Bhattacharya, you're still with us. 2-3 points which have come about in terms of the key highlights. Not only the industry representatives are pointing out, but Shubhmoy here was also referring to. And let's look at that aspect in terms of the surcharge, the AOPs, surcharge for AOPs. Coming down from 37% to 15%, clarification or rather explanation in terms of the housing and education cess, with the finance minister saying that any surcharge will not be admissible as business expense. Now, these were pretty much required.
Yes, certainly. I think these are schemes that will go a long way in addressing some of the concerns that an economy that was recovering from the COVID needed. Yes, I think the long-term capital gains tax will be a relief. There is a taxation treatment for the cooperatives. To my mind, was a big fillip for the cooperative sector, where the minimum alternative tax as well as the surcharges being levied on the cooperatives are being removed. So I think on the whole, this budget has addressed the concerns of the rural, if I may use the word rural corporate India. So I think there is an issue there, and I think we will have to see how those numbers actually pan out.
Okay. Now, the related aspect here, since you mentioned the rural area, Mr. Bhattacharya, is something which we were discussing yesterday when we were talking about the economic survey and what the survey says. That is the agriculture and allied sectors. Being the bedrock of Indian economy. We've seen from 3.6% to 3.9%, but in terms of what we see here in this budget, there seems to be a lot of focus on using technology, high-tech interventions, and giving a push to entrepreneurship there as well.
Well, I think the allocation for agriculture, the focus on rural India, is quite substantial in my view. We have whether it is through the housing schemes or whether is it through the education in rural India, whether it is the irrigation package, the interlinkages of rivers. So if you look at an overall
माफ कीजिएगा, आपको रोकेंगे। इस समय हम सीधा रुक करेंगे। अब से कुछ ही पलों में राज्यसभा की कार्रवाई शुरू होने वाली है। आइए आपको सीधा लिए चलते हैं।
माननीय सभासद, माननीय सभापति जी,
Union Budget, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, today.
Sir, I rise to lay on the table a statement in English and Hindi of the estimated receipts and expenditure of the government for the year 22-23.
Fiscal Policy Statement 22 and 23, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman.
Sir, I rise to lay on the table a copy each in English and Hindi of the following papers under Section 3(1) of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003. 1. The medium-term fiscal policy cum fiscal policy strategy statement, and 2. Macroeconomic framework statement. Thank you.
The House stands adjourned to meet at 10 hours on Wednesday, 2nd February 2022.
(21-22) and the estimated procurement of paddy in Kharif 21-22 will cover 1,208 lakh.
कुछ ही पलों पहले वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण ने राज्यसभा में आम बजट 2022-23 की कॉपी जो है वो टेबल की है। वो सीधे तस्वीरें अभी हमने थोड़ी देर पहले देखी। आज आम बजट 2022-23 वित्त मंत्री ने पेश किया। क्या बड़ी बातें इस बजट को लेकर रही हैं, उस पर हम लगातार अपने मेहमानों के साथ भी चर्चा कर रहे हैं। और आइए फिलहाल हम सुनते हैं कि वित्त मंत्री ने क्या बड़े ऐलान किए हैं बजट में।
India's economic growth in the current year is estimated to be 9.2%, highest among all large economies. I recognize we are in the midst of an Omicron wave with high incidence but milder symptoms. Further, the speed and coverage of our vaccination campaign has helped greatly. With an accelerated improvement of health infrastructure in the past 2 years, we are in a strong position to withstand challenges. I am confident that with Sabka Prayas, we will continue our journey with strong growth. PM Gati Shakti. PM Gati Shakti is a transformative approach for economic growth and sustainable development. The approach is driven by 7 engines, namely roads, railways, airports, ports, mass transport, waterways, and logistics infrastructure. All 7 engines will pull forward the economy in unison. These engines are supported by the complementary roles of energy transmission, IT communication, bulk water and sewerage, and social infrastructure. Finally, the approach is powered by clean energy and Sabka Prayas. The efforts of the central government, the state governments, and the private sector together, leading to a huge job and entrepreneurial opportunities for all, especially the youth. PM Gati Shakti Master Plan, National Master Plan, the scope of PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan will encompass the 7 engines for economic transformation, seamless multimodal connectivity, and logistics efficiency. It will also include the infrastructure development by the state governments as per Gati Shakti Master Plan. The focus will be on planning, financing, including through innovative ways, use of technology, and speedier implementation. The projects pertaining to these 7 engines in the national infrastructure pipeline will be aligned with PM Gati Shakti framework. Road transport. PM Gati Shakti Master Plan for expressways will be formulated in 22-23 to facilitate faster movement of people and goods. The National Highways network will be expanded by 25,000 kilometers in 2022-23. 20,000 crores of rupees will be mobilized through innovative ways of financing to complement the public resources. The data exchange among all mode operators will be brought on unified logistics interface platform, designed for application programming interface. This will provide for efficient movement of goods through different modes, reducing logistics cost and time, assisting just-in-time inventory management, and in eliminating tedious documentation. Most importantly, this will provide real-time information to all stakeholders and improve international competitiveness. Open source mobility stack for organizing seamless travel of passengers will also be facilitated. Contracts for implementation of multimodal logistic parks at 4 locations through PPP mode will be awarded in 22-23.
Okay, so there you heard the Finance Minister's, key highlights of a Finance Minister's budget speech. Let's now, come back to the agriculture part there, Shubhmoy, earlier, before we went to the upper house, talking about that. In terms of the focus on agri and allied sectors, what do you see is the path ahead from here onwards, not only in terms of policies and steps, but also in terms of what is achievable and how will it be achieved?
Yeah, that's an important point, Vishal, because essentially what is the government now saying, center? The center is saying, and this is in the perspective what has happened in the agriculture sector, that there are already laws. There are state level laws, there's a model central law, which is available for agricultural marketing and so on and all that. What the center is now saying is that I am going to bring farmers under the digital frame. I'm going to bring the farmers, give the opportunity to them to take advantage of the framework that is available. Now that's very good, because what it essentially does is it sort of allows a pick and choose. Now the numbers, for agriculture sector, the big change I feel is basically what happens in infrastructure.
Okay.
When a road gets built, when a railway network gets built, these are very solid economic reform makers for agriculture sector, because that helps marketing. So what happens in the logistics sector? These are the sectors where the center is putting a lot of effort.
And the budget also, gives a lot of focus on the use of technology and entrepreneurship as well. When we're talking about agriculture and allied sectors, Mr. Bhattacharya was also referring to, the dairy sector. Even the industry representative we had, Mr. Mukundan, was also referring to that. So it looks like, it can't be just one way of looking at pushing the agri sector reforms or, taking it higher from the 3.9%, growth figures as of now.
Yeah, and in that context, the change in the taxation structure for cooperatives, bringing it at par with companies, now that actually means that the cost of forming a cooperative becomes less. Now that's important because we are talking about farmer-producer organizations.
KFPOs.
There are a lot of these ideas that the farmers essentially should be pooled together to be able to take advantage of economies of scale. Now, obviously, the costs was higher. I mean, so that was something that wasn't discovered earlier, but it's now there that the costs have been reduced. So that is a very solid help step. Secondly, when farming is an activity which requires connectivity of money to flow through, bringing post office savings bank on the digital platform, making every one of the post office savings bank. These are measures which often escape notice, but they actually play a very strong role.
And digital banking centers in 75 districts.
Countryside, exactly, because they allow for easier movement of flow of money, and that's what creates more liquidity in the economy, which wasn't available earlier. Remember, you have to read this in context of measures like e-Shram and others, which have already been announced. So they sort of build on. It's not something that these were already there and those are forgotten. Now you go on to the others. They sort of are connecting through. And that is what is necessary for the agricultural sector to take advantage. And agricultural sector has been doing well in the pandemic. In fact, that was the sector which grew at 3.8, 3.9 in both the years, actually keeping up the growth rate in the economy when the rest of the economy was sort of floundering.
Indeed.
So to take advantage of it, you need these sort of changes. And in the context of climate change, which is coming upon us, again, the government's emphasis on
chemical-free
farming, and raising of green bonds, all of these go to help the agriculture sector.
Okay.
और इसके साथ ही एग्रीकल्चर में जो स्टार्टअप की बात है, उसे जिस तरह के समर्थन की बात बजट में कही गई है शुभमोय, और साथ ही स्टार्टअप की जब हम बात कर रहे हैं और धीरे धीरे युवाओं को आधुनिक खेती के साथ जुड़ने की बात कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि समय के साथ तमाम ऐसी चीजें हैं, वो चाहे क्लाइमेट चेंज को लेकर रही हो या खेती को लेकर रही हो। मैं इस पर आपसे कमेंट लूंगी। इस समय मैं सीधा एक बार फिर अखिलेश सुमन, मेरे सहयोगी संसद भवन परिसर से जुड़ रहे हैं, उनके पास हम रुक करते हैं। अखिलेश, जो बड़ी बातें आपके नजरिए से रही हैं बजट में, उनका जिक्र आप कर रहे थे, खासकर जो पड़ोसी देशों को मदद देने से जुड़े जो ऐलान है उसके बारे में आप बता रहे थे। मैं चाहूंगी थोड़ा आप बताएं उसके बारे में, और हमने देखा कि राज्यसभा में भी जो कॉपी है वो टेबल हो गई है, और क्या प्रतिक्रियाएं हैं?
देखिए, निश्चित तौर पे ये औपचारिकता होती है कि जब लोकसभा में बजट पेश हो जाता है उसके 1 घंटे बाद राज्यसभा में बजट रखा जाता है, उसकी प्रति रखी जाती है, लेकिन उस पर कोई बहस, कोई डिस्कशन, कोई चर्चा आज नहीं होती है। तो उसी परिपाटी को आज भी अपनाया गया और राज्यसभा में बजट की प्रति रखी गई और उसके अलावा जो फिनांस बिल था वो रखा गया। तो उसके बाद राज्यसभा एडजॉर्न हो गई है कल के लिए, और जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि कल 10 बजे से फिर राज्यसभा की कार्रवाई शुरू होगी जो 3 बजे तक चलेगी। तो ये तो बजट से संबंधित, आज के कार्रवाई से संबंधित बात है, लेकिन जो सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात है कि आज निर्मला सीतारमण ने तकरीबन 1.5 घंटे का जो बजट भाषण दिया, और वो काफी ध्यान से लोग उसको अभी एनालाइज करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, और यहाँ तक कि जो विपक्ष है, विपक्ष भी कोई ऐसी खामी निकाल नहीं पा रहा है कि वो क्या करे। और खासतौर पर सबसे ज्यादा आश्चर्य तब हुआ जब वो बोलने जा रही थी कि हम डायरेक्ट टैक्स की अब घोषणा कर रहे हैं, उसके बाद तृणमूल कांग्रेस के एक सांसद ने चुटकी दी कि हाँ अब काम की बातें सुनते हैं, लेकिन सबको बड़ी निराशा हुई, खासतौर पर विपक्ष को, कि इनकम टैक्स स्लैब में कोई परिवर्तन नहीं किया गया। तो एक जो होता है विपक्ष के लिए काफी एक्साइटिंग टाइम होता है, और पत्रकारों के लिए भी काफी एक्साइटिंग टाइम होता है जब इनकम टैक्स के स्लैब में परिवर्तन किया जाता है। उसमें तरह तरह के विश्लेषण किए जाते हैं, किस पर क्या असर पड़ेगा, किस पर नहीं असर पड़ेगा। तो वह जो उस पर निर्मला सीतारमण ने कुछ बोला ही नहीं, तो एक बहुत बड़ा एक्साइटमेंट आज बजट से निकल गया। लेकिन जो एनालाइज कर रहे थे सांसद, सत्ता पक्ष के सांसद जिस तरीके से बता रहे थे, उनका कहना यह था कि ये बजट जो है इनोवेटिव बजट है, और यह बजट अगले 20 साल 25 साल को ध्यान में रख के किया गया है, ताकि जो आने वाली चुनौतियां हैं जो भारत की, खासतौर पे क्लाइमेट चेंज के बारे में जो बैटरी स्वैप की बात की गई कि बैटरी स्वैप की व्यवस्था की जाएगी, क्योंकि हर जगह पे हम चार्जर उपलब्ध नहीं करा सकते अगर हम जो इलेक्ट्रिकल व्हीकल को लगाएंगे। तो यह काफी इनोवेटिव बात है कि बैटरी स्वैप करेंगे आप, और बैटरी स्वैपिंग पूरी पूरी एक्टिविटी में प्राइवेट सेक्टर को लगाया जाएगा, तो एक एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन की एक्टिविटी बढ़ेगी, जिसमें कि प्राइवेट बैटरी मैन्युफैक्चरर से लेके उसकी डिलीवरी एजेंट और उसमें लगे हुए सारे जो मेंटेनेंस एक्टिविटी है सारे। तो एक मंत्री ने यह बताया कि यह एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन करने वाली बात है, और इस एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन और इनोवेटिव और फिर फ्यूचरिस्टिक बजट के कारण जो एक भावना बनी है, उस भावना के तहत आप देख रहे हैं कि सेंसेक्स में भी काफी उछाल आया, काफी पॉजिटिव रिएक्शन हुआ शेयर बाजार से। अब उसके बाद जहां तक कुछ सांसद ये बता रहे थे कि जो आप बजट डेफिसिट देख रहे हैं, बजट डेफिसिट तो बहुत ही नेचुरल है, अगर कल्याणकारी योजनाओं को जारी रखना है तो हमको बजट डेफिसिट देखना पड़ेगा। फिर भी सरकार ने प्रयास ये किया है कि बजट डेफिसिट में बहुत ज्यादा परिवर्तन नहीं हो और उसको किसी तरीके से मीट आउट किया जाए। और जैसा कि निर्मला जी ने बताया भी कि वो बजट डेफिसिट की जो बात बता रहे हैं उसमें जो बोरोइंग है, बोरोइंग को नहीं इंक्लूड कर रही है, तो हो सकता है आसान बोरोइंग हो और उस आसान बोरोइंग से जो वेलफेयर मेजर्स लिए जाने हैं और खास करके जो कोरोना पीरियड के थर्ड फेज में जो रिकवरी का फेज चल रहा है, जो बार बार यह बात आ रही है कि जो 2 फेज के बाद
के लिए भी फिलहाल हम आपके साथ जुड़ेंगे। हमारे साथ एक और गेस्ट जुड़
Tyagarajan, I believe is joining us from CII, Managing Director of Blue Star Limited as well. Mr. Tyagarajan, a very forward-looking budget. That's what the analysts are pointing out, and even the Finance Minister began a speech by saying that this will set the tone for the next 25 years. Now, going into the specifics in terms of what the budget says, not only for the industry but also for various sectors out there, how would you assess various announcements which have been made and the way the Finance Minister has laid out the format for implementation of those policy decisions and the money being spent in various areas?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me as a part of this panel. I think most of the recommendations of CII pre-budget memorandum have been accepted. We are grateful to the Finance Minister for that. And I think, as you rightly mentioned, this provides the continuity. That is what is very important. So there is no deviation from the set path that has been there for the past couple of years. Specifically, last year to this year, there is a continuity. I think we are on a growth path. So we were very particular that this economic GDP growth that is happening now, it should be sustained over next few years. There are a lot of elements there, be it manufacturing or infrastructure, agriculture, services, the sustainability, the digitization. So therefore, I think this is a very great budget. And also, most importantly, MSMEs, quite a few measures that have been taken, like the credit guarantee scheme extension, the other supports, these are also welcome.
Okay, and in terms of, achieving the commitments towards SDGs and climate change as well, quite a lot of announcements and steps out there. Do you believe, in terms of their implementation, how will it move forward, and what's the industry's perspective on those steps and decisions which have been taken?
I think in the past couple of years, we see very significant improvement in terms of implementation. Take, for example, the PLI scheme. Within 12 months, it was created, and it was placed before the industry. All inputs were taken and gone ahead and implemented. And in fact, the new facilities, for example, in my own industry, will get inaugurated by September, October. So this is one program which I will quote as an example. A very complex one, well executed, and with deep sense of commitment.
Okay.
Same way, if you look at the sustainability related, whether it is Kigali or Montreal Protocol related on energy efficiency, or the low global warming, or the ozone depletion, it is executed well. So I suppose that we should make it happen. We will continue to interact with the government. In fact, we have been asking for wherever there is a glitch, we are knocking the doors of the government. And to me, the implementation commitment is very high on quite a few areas.
Okay. Okay, indeed, the implementation part will have to be taken into consideration there. Shubhmoy, you've been, referring to earlier the social sector aspects in our discussion. Of course, there are, several major points there, but the social sector, when we look at it, when we divide into it, Preeti was earlier discussing with Mr. Sanchit here, which was the health sector. But coming back to the other two parts, that's education, and there's a lot of focus on nutrition as well, Anganwadis, the water. If you look at, there has been a substantial allocation, 60,000 crore rupees for this financial year for the Har Ghar Nal Se Jal scheme.
Absolutely. What we often mistake in the budget over years is that there's always a tendency to announce new schemes. Now that affects delivery. The government over the last few years, this government has actually announced some very major schemes. The Har Ghar Jal is one of those. The scheme for Anna Yojana is another one of those. All of these are very big schemes which are running. Now, any other scheme that comes in and tries to distract from there essentially creates problem. So what the government has done has allowed expansion of the remit of those schemes.
Okay.
That how will they be allowed and insured? In fact, in this context, it will be very important to look at the outcome budget later on, because outcome budget, which is also presented along with the budget papers, tells to the public that what has been the rupee by rupee use of that money which was spent, which is the right of the people in a democracy. And that data is available in the public. And it's something to encourage everyone to go through that outcome budget to see how well or how well not well has the money been spent, because that gives a lot of understanding of where the money is going. For instance, the finance minister talked about enhanced allocation for the most backward districts. Now that's a very important part of the entire social sector umbrella.
Indeed, and that puts a lot of focus on the social sector there, as you're pointing out. Continuation of schemes there. Mr. Mukul Bagla, meanwhile, is joining us, Chair of Direct Taxes Committee at PhD Chamber. Mr. Bagla, welcome to Sunset Television. Not on the expected lines, not word there on income tax slabs. But when we're talking about direct taxes, if you look at the fine print, a lot has been said and a lot has been done as well. If you could, dwell deeper into what does it mean for the common citizen of the country?
Thank you so much for having me on the panel. I didn't get the last portion of your question very clearly. It was a little noisy here. Please, can you just repeat that?
Yes. Mr. Bagla, the question is that how would you assess what has been said on the direct taxes by the finance minister, and what does it mean for the common citizen of the country? Although there is nothing which has been pointed out or said by the finance minister vis-a-vis the income tax slabs, but there is a lot in the fine print there.
So I think the main emphasis on this year's budget was more on having ease to taxpayer and for dispute resolution, rather than having concrete measures to actually reduce tax rates or anything on that account. But I think the message was very clear that the honest taxpayer will be given his due, and the people who are avoiding taxes will not be left scot-free, as we had seen in the past that people who have been caught during search and surveys, they have been declaring their income and then offsetting that income against their brought forward losses and escaping their tax liabilities. So it has made very clear that if you fail to disclose something, and then you will have to pay taxes. You can't just simply avoid those taxes and adjust against the past losses. But the policy seems to be very clear. Yes, there's a lot of disappointment in respect of some tax rates. We, as a chamber, were trying to request the Honorable Finance Minister that the tax rates for the smaller businesses, which are carried on as LLPs and sole proprietorships, they don't have a level playing field as against the corporates, which are having a 22% tax rate. So if you see the background, the corporate tax rate was as high as 35% in 2001, which has come down to 22% or 15% now.
Okay.
Whereas the partnerships and the LLPs and the sole proprietorships are standing at 30% for the last 17 years. And even the individuals, for that matter, the salaried class is is again sitting at 30% plus various levels of surcharges for the last so many years. So we're definitely expecting some concession on that account because of the fact that we've had a buoyant tax collection of more than 60% tax collection increase over the last year and 40% increase over the year preceding that. So in that environment, we were expecting that could have been given, but a little disappointed on that account. Very happy that we are having some clarity on the taxation of the crypto, which was again one of our proposals that we need a clarity as a country. We need because the amount of people trading in cryptos is huge, and there was total non-clarity.
That indeed is a huge announcement.
With the corporate tax rate of the tax rate of 30% announced today, that comes at least it's being recognized as an asset class.
तो इस क्षेत्र को लेकर, खासकर टैक्स को लेकर क्या उम्मीदें रही और कहाँ थोड़ी बहुत निराशा हाथ लगी, उसके बारे में आपने बताया। इस समय हम चलेंगे दर्शन हीरानंदानी हमारे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं, हाइड्रोकार्बन काउंसिल एसोचैम एंड सीईओ एच एनर्जी। हीरानंदानी जी, आपका शुक्रिया हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए। अगर हम देखें और खासकर ऊर्जा के क्षेत्र में, एनर्जी के क्षेत्र में जो बढ़ती जरूरतें हैं लगातार, ना सिर्फ हमारी बल्कि दुनिया भर की, और जो क्लीन एनर्जी की तरफ आगे जो रास्ता है उसे लंबा सफर एक तय हमें करना भी है। अभी हम देखें तो इस बजट में 19,500 करोड़ रुपए का आवंटन बढ़ाया गया है सौर ऊर्जा उत्पादन के लिए, साथ ही जो इलेक्ट्रिक वाहन है उनके लिए नए चार्जिंग स्टेशन और सौर ऊर्जा के लिए सौर पैनल आधारित जो बिजली है, तमाम ऐसे कदम हैं जिनका जिक्र इस बार बजट में किया गया है। तो ये आप कितने बड़े कदम मानते हैं जब हम एनर्जी और क्लीन एनर्जी के दिशा में आगे बढ़ने की बात करते हैं? तो
निया जी, ये क्लीन एनर्जी की जो दिशा है, आई थिंक इट्स अ वेरी गुड अप्रोच बाय गवर्नमेंट दोनों चीजें काम कर रही है। हर एरिया में वो क्लीनर जाने की कोशिश कर रही है। तो जहां कोयला है वहां उसको, कोयला और केरोसिन है उसको एलपीजी में कर रही है। जहां एलपीजी आ रही है वहां कह रही है ठीक है, इसको बायो सीएनजी, बायोफ्यूल क्या हम सेल्फ जनरेट कर सकते हैं। जहां वो आ रहा है उसके बाद नेक्स्ट स्टेज में इलेक्ट्रिक और हाइड्रोजन की काम कर रहे हैं, एंड इन सब चीजों को डोमेस्टिक करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। तो सोलर में जैसे हमने देखा बहुत ही बड़ा प्रोग्राम है फॉर लोकल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग ऑफ ईवीज। अगर आप देखेंगे जो एथेनॉल बेस्ड,
just stitch them together into
so ये जो प्रोग्राम है ये एथेनॉल में भी आप देखेंगे ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट और ये आगे बढ़ रहा है। और मैं एक और अलग से पॉइंट ऑब्जर्वेशन कहना चाहूंगा कि इस बजट में दोनों एंड्स उन्होंने कर लिया है। एक जगह जहां सब जैसे बहुत ही सिंपल चीज फार्मिंग जैसे है, उसको केमिकल फ्री फार्मिंग का एक अप्रोच पायलट आगे बढ़ाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, और हर एरिया में डिजिटाइजेशन से कितना मैक्सिमम बेनिफिट कर सकते हैं और डिजिटल लेके उसको कितनी मैक्सिमम बेनिफिट्स ला सकते हैं, एवरी एरिया में उन्होंने कुछ ना कुछ कदम आगे लिए हैं।
Okay, indeed, Mr. Hiranandani, quite a lot of steps there when we're talking about clean energy, a lot of measures being announced to achieve the targets there and ensure that we fulfill our commitments to the SDGs and the climate change as well. We'll take a short break here, but our discussion and analysis of the Union budget will continue on Sunset Television. Stay tuned.
Those in favor, please say aye.
जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए,
I think the ayes have it.
हवालों के पक्ष में हुआ।
Ayes have it. The bill is passed.
Nature and You, the Environment series. Aim is to awake and aware people to protect our environment, be it climate or wildlife crisis, depletion of ocean resources, waste management issues. Only on Sunset TV.
Those in favor, please say aye.
जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए,
I think the ayes have it.
हवालों के पक्ष में हुआ।
Ayes have it. The bill is passed.
सटीक लक्ष्य, अटूट हौसले, निस्वार्थ कर्म, जनहित सर्वोपरि, नायक नए भारत के, कहानियां बदलाव की। ये भी नायक सिर्फ संसद टीवी पर।
Those in favor, please say aye.
जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए,
I think the ayes have it.
हवालों के पक्ष में हुआ।
Ayes have it. The bill is passed. Those in favor, please say aye.
जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए,
I think the ayes have it.
हवालों के पक्ष में हुआ।
Ayes have it. The bill is passed.
What is India's perspective on global issues? How is India navigating its bilateral and multilateral relations? How do we decode foreign policy? And what is the impact India is having on the world? For an in-depth analysis of international affairs, watch Diplomatic Dispatch with me, Vikas Baru, only on Sunset TV.
Namaskar, hello and a very warm welcome viewers. You're watching non-stop coverage of Union Budget on Sunset TV. The union budget seeks to complement macroeconomic level growth with a focus on microeconomic level of all-inclusive welfare. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman emphasized that this budget continues to provide impetus for growth. It lays a parallel track of a blueprint for the Amrit Kal, which is futuristic and inclusive, which will directly benefit our youth, women, farmers, and scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. And big public investment for modern infrastructure, readying for India at 100. And this shall be guided by PM Gati Shakti and will benefit all the people by synergy of multimodal approach. And for nuanced understanding of this year's budget, we are joined by very esteemed guests in the studio. Joining us, Dr. Ram Upendra Das. He's head Center for Regional Trade, Department of Commerce, Industry and Ministry of Commerce, Government of India. And Mr. Charan Singh, former chairman of Punjab and Sindh Bank. Welcome to Sunset TV and thank you so much for joining us.
जी थैंक यू कृति। नमस्कार, स्वागत है आपका संसद टीवी पर। मैं हूं मनोज वर्मा और आप देख रहे हैं हमारा खास कार्यक्रम भारत का बजट। केंद्रीय वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण ने मंगलवार को संसद में केंद्रीय बजट पेश किया। बजट का संदेश जो है उसके अनुसार राष्ट्र पहले, किसानों की आय दुगनी करने, स्वस्थ भारत, सुशासन, युवाओं के लिए अवसर, सभी के लिए शिक्षा, महिला सशक्तिकरण, समावेशी विकास का साफ संदेश है। देश की आजादी का 75वां वर्ष है, यानी अमृत महोत्सव का समय है। इसलिए ये बजट जो है भविष्य के भारत का बजट है। कैसा बजट है, इस पे हम चर्चा करेंगे, इसे समझने की कोशिश करेंगे, आपको जानकारी देने की कोशिश करेंगे अगले 1 घंटे।
All right, Mr. Das, let me begin the program with you. Now, as the economic survey pointed out, Indian economy is expected to grow by 8 to 8.5% in the next year, in line with the projections of all the multilateral institutions, whether World Bank, Asian Development Bank, or even IMF. Do you think this budget paves way for this kind of progression?
Certainly. If you see the thrust areas of this budget, these are showing a very matured approach and intellectual basis to economic policy making at the macro level, which does not lose sight at the micro level. So the basic emphasis is to generate economic activity in a manner that at micro levels, greater economic activity takes place, greater employment generation takes place, greater opportunities for profit generation take place, and all that gets aggregated to higher level of GDP growth. And the question that you asked, therefore, this budget, the way it has continued the past policies, hasn't tinkered too much, showing a sign of stability in policy, which is a very important signal to economic entities, both India and abroad, has all the basic ingredients to achieve the kind of growth rates that have been projected by the economic survey yesterday and also projected by international institutions.
So Manoj ji, this budget has all the important ingredients required for this recipe of economic growth.
जी बिल्कुल। अगर मैं बात करूं, इस बजट की बात करूं चरण सिंह जी, तो गांव गरीब किसान इस सरकार का फोकस पहले भी रहा है और इस बजट में भी हमें साफ देखने को मिल रहा है कि गांव गरीब किसान सरकार के फोकस में है। अगर मैं बैंकिंग सेक्टर की बात करूं तो सरकार ने गांवों को ध्यान में रखकर जो डाकघरों को मुख्य बैंकिंग प्रणाली में लाने की कोशिश की है, एक अवसर देने की कोशिश की है कि गांव के लोगों तक जो बैंकिंग सेवाएं हैं, जो सरकार योजनाएं बनाती है, डायरेक्ट उनको बेनिफिट मिले, उसे आप कैसे देखते हैं?
पहली बात तो बिल्कुल सही है कि सरकार ने ये चीज को काफी मन में रखा है। जब उन्होंने कहा कि डिजिटल बैंकिंग करनी है, कोर बैंकिंग काफी ज्यादा टेक्नोलॉजी को यूज करती है और 1.5 लाख पोस्ट ऑफिस हैं और गांव में इनमें से 1,35,000 पोस्ट ऑफिस मेरा ख्याल गांव में जी। तो ये सारे काफी दिनों से हम सोच रहे थे कि कमर्शियल बैंकिंग पेनिट्रेशन गांवों में ज्यादा नहीं हो पा रही है, हुई है। पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स ने तो बहुत ज्यादा बैंकिंग पेनिट्रेशन की है, पर जहां पर ये गांव के पोस्ट ऑफिस उन सब में खाते हैं, बैंकिंग अकाउंट्स हैं, उनको कोर बैंकिंग से कैसे जोड़ दिया जाए। तो अब जब कोर बैंकिंग वहां जुड़ गई, टेक्नोलॉजी का पूरा इस्तेमाल हुआ, तो ये बहुत ही फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन वाली बात हो जाएगी। आप ये भी देखिए कि गांव में सरकार ने कहा है कि ऑप्टिकल फाइबर लेआउट 2025 तक हो जाएगा और ड्रोन टेक्नोलॉजी भी खेतों तक जाएगी और फार्मर्स तक जाएगी। तो टेक्नोलॉजी का इतना यूज जो सरकार कर रही है बैंकिंग और बैंकिंग के इकोसिस्टम, क्योंकि बैंकिंग एक इकोसिस्टम बना देता है, तो बैंकिंग का इकोसिस्टम जब टेक्नोलॉजी पे निर्भर हो जाता है तो पूरी की पूरी डिजिटाइजेशन स्वाभाविक है। इससे गांव वालों को वही फायदा होगा जहां कमर्शियल बैंक का किसी शहर से कहीं पर किसी खाते से किसी के खाते में बैंक अकाउंट ट्रांसफर कर सकते हैं। अगर पोस्ट ऑफिस के बैंक अकाउंट्स कोर बैंकिंग में आ गए तो बहुत ही ज्यादा गांव वालों को उसका फायदा होगा और बैंकिंग को भी उसका बहुत एडवांटेज मिलेगा।
जी।
All right, also joining us through virtual platform, Mr. P. Balaji, Chairman of Telecom Council as a Chairman Director, Vodafone Idea. Also Mr. Rudra Chatterjee, he's Chair, FICCI Furniture Committee and Chairman, Orbit Private Limited. Welcome to Sunset TV and thank you so much for joining us. And Mr. Balaji, let me come to you first. The budget also paves way, and as Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said today, that required auction for the spectrum would be conducted in 2022 for the rollout of 5G. What would that mean for the telecom sector?
I think first and foremost, the government has taken some very bold reforms as it pertains to the telecom sector in September to address the financial stress. And the government has been very cognizant of the role that telecom sector plays in life and livelihoods, and then also to make sure that India remains connected and it drives the digital economy. So I think it's a very, very progressive budget overall. The government is also talking about the PLI schemes for 5G equipment. That means more production within India to drive the ecosystem and therefore make equipment cheaper in the country and generate more employment. 5G, they are talking about making spectrum available. I think that's a good thing. The industry has requested the government to make sure that considering the financial stress in the sector, that the pricing for this 5G spectrum should be kept low and that there is adequate moratorium given for a few years so that the cash flow which is generated or savings which is generated is used by the telecom sector to put into capex and roll out the digital 5G highways by which startups, by which citizens of this country can benefit of the 5G services. We are quite hopeful that this government, which is reform-oriented and solving issues, will definitely consider the request of the industry, as well as our request for lowering some of the taxes and levies so that more money is made available for the sector to create digital highways, which will have multiplier effect for the economy and for the citizens of this country.
All right, so that is going to have the multiplier impact on the economy.
जी, रुद्रा चटर्जी जी, अगर मैं ये समझना आपसे चाहूं कि सरकार ने जिस तरह का केंद्रीय वित्त मंत्री ने बजट पेश किया है उसके मुताबिक सुधारों वाला एक बजट है, भविष्य की दृष्टि से कहा जाए, लोगों को नौकरी कैसे मिले इस पर केंद्रित है बजट अगर कहा जाए, और साथ ही टेक्नोलॉजी केंद्रित बजट जो हम देख रहे हैं, आप कैसे देख रहे हैं इस बजट को?
जरूर, फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट ये बजट का टोटल आउटले इज 38 लाख crores, which is $500 billion. तो अभी तक जितना बजट हुआ सबसे बड़ा बजट
जी
इन टर्म्स ऑफ आउटले। हम लोग जब देखेंगे कि इतना साल कोविड का विषय में जो डिमांड कंस्ट्रेंट था, which was the biggest issue in the economy, the constraint of demand, that will get a shot in the arm. And the finance minister एक बात बताए कि this is crowding in of private investment. एक बात होता है कि public investment crowds out private investment, but when the demand is less, public investment will bring in private investment. वो एक बड़ा बात है। दूसरा बात is out of this 38 lakh crores, 7.5 lakh crores, that is $100 billion, is for capital expenditure, which is by far the highest outlay for capital expenditure, which means the investment cycle, जो एक gross capital formation होता है एक economy का, which has reduced from 40% to around 30%, that will get a shot in the arm and increase. In terms of technology, there are two aspects. One is agriculture. We talked about Kisan drone. We talked about how to, which will help understanding weather and pests and other issues to the Kisan Road, but also significant focus on logistics, which is most relevant to agriculture. The 7 engines of logistics that was described. So for agriculture and food processing, for exports, this will become a big issue.
जी.
So इससे both creating demand because of additional spending and reducing the frictions of the supply chain should have a buoyant effect on employment, which is an issue right now. So I think on those factors, there were significant changes in the budget. I think the best part of the budget was what it didn't do. Because what happens in our country, कि हर budget एक नया surprise देते हैं.
जी.
That, I think, as the country becomes a mature, larger economy, business has to have stability to operate. कि 3, 4, 5 साल एक ही तरह से काम चले. तब जो investment करते हैं, उसको पता है कि investment करेंगे तो the whole environment is not going to change every year. वो सबसे ज़रूरी चीज़ है. So the fact that the budget was one of the shortest, the fact that it didn't make many of the changes, while focusing on capital expenditure and overall demand, I think were the special features of the budget.
जी. बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. अगर कृति बात की जाए कि शिक्षा और स्वास्थ्य की दृष्टि से बहुत महत्वपूर्ण ये बजट रहा है, डॉक्टर राम, आप कैसे देखते हैं? अगर हम जब शिक्षा की बात कर रहे हैं सरकार, तो बजट में पीएम ई विद्या पर के जरिए एक प्रकार से लोगों को शिक्षा कैसे बेहतर मिले, इसको आप कैसे देखते हैं इस पहल को कि डिजिटल पे भी खासा जोर शिक्षा के जरिए करने की कोशिश की गई है, उसको भी फोकस रखा गया है इस बजट में?
जी, इसमें कई बिंदुओं का उल्लेख किया जा सकता है. पहला तो इस बजट में आपने अगर ध्यान से सुना तो शायद एकेडमिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस
जी
और रिसर्च एनवायरनमेंट पर फोकस कई बार कई संदर्भों में इस बजट में आया. वो चाहे अर्बन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बात हो, चाहे रूरल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बात हो, चाहे गिफ्ट सिटी में फॉरेन यूनिवर्सिटीज को लाने की बात हो, या जो लोग कोविड की वजह से जो बच्चे 12वीं कक्षा तक जिनकी पढ़ाई में बाधा आई, उसके लिए जो 200 चैनल्स की बात कही गई है, जिससे कि उनको ऑनलाइन या डिजिटल मीडियम से तमाम अच्छी जानकारियां और शिक्षा के क्षेत्र की जो कैपेबिलिटी है वो उनको सहजता से उपलब्ध हो सके. ये कई बिंदु हैं जिसकी वजह से आप कह सकते हैं कि जहां पर एक तरफ बजट ये दिखाता है कि वो बहुत ही संतुलित और पॉलिसी सर्टेनिटी को मेंटेन करने की कोशिश किया है, ये बिंदु जो है अपने आप में एक नयापन लिए हुए.
जी.
All right, Mr. Balaji, coming to you now. Duty concession on parts of phone chargers, the transformers, digital rupee, as we were talking about, that the wait for 5G is over, and also the fact that e-passports would start to roll out. What would this mean for the entire digital space of India?
Way of having a multiplier effect. As I mentioned, the government came with a very bold telecom reforms earlier to fix some of the issues of financial stress. Now with the digitalization on multiple fronts, it means further job creation, further rollout of services for consumers and for citizens. They talk about making services in rural India available, which are available only otherwise to urban India. And so their push for fiberization through the BharatNet project, where they will have all the villages connected by 2025, again a step in the right direction. They're talking about also incentivizing for the first time through R&D. Some of the USO fund will be used for solutions and R&D for 5G and for rural technologies. So all of these, if I were to say, are great steps in order to boost the digital economy, and our startups will obviously be able to then derive further benefit and then further drive economic growth. And in the march towards the 1 trillion digital economy, that's the vision for the government and for the country.
All right. Also joining us is Mr. Rakesh Bharti Mittal. He's Vice Chairman of Bharti Enterprises. He's joining us through virtual platform. Welcome to Sunset TV, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So India's growth is highest among all the major economies. We are ready to withstand all the global challenges. What are the big takeaways for you, sir, from this budget?
Well, I would say the first point I want to make is there are some path-breaking long-term policy measures which the finance minister talked about, and I would like to indeed compliment her on that. Clearly, on the digital currency, the digital rupee, which will be launched next year by the Reserve Bank of India using blockchain technology, is something which will add to the digitization program of the Prime Minister, as well as online payments and online transactions, bringing a lot of transparency. The second I would talk about on the education side, setting up digital universities in a hub-and-spoke model. I think that is something which is great because just building physical infrastructure is not the answer. We need to really look at as many as world-class universities which can be set up, including the Indian universities who need to really go on to online delivery of education, thereby increasing the number without having to increase the physical infrastructure. And I think on the education, One Class, One TV, the education channel program, which was talked about, from 12 to 200 education channels, which will come up, that will help greatly the children who don't have smart devices, whose parents don't have smart devices, so they can't really access apps, but a television is available in every home. And this will ensure that the teachers can deliver the education online along with the course and curriculum which is available on the television. And more importantly, the self-learning of the students. The 2 lakh Anganwadis which are going to be upgraded, I think that is something which is exactly very, very crucial and important in the early development years of the child. And I think that is something which will ensure that a lot of focus which will go into the education sector.